everybody. Welcome in. How is everybody doing? Waste, congrats on getting first. Isa, welcome in. Crusader, welcome in. How's everybody doing tonight? Let's get the mic nice and close for a quiet evening. Tonight we are going to continue reading Monica and the Fifth by Brenda Page. It's been a while since we've read it. How is everyone doing? Oh, you know what? I wonder if I can put... I'm having issues with my mouse being... The images. Doing good? Yay! Excellent. Image. Monica. Downloads. Let's put this up here. Oop, that's a little too small over there. Let's put this on the mantle. Right over here. This is the book we're reading today. I went back and listened to my last VOD of it. I know it's been a while. Hi, blah, blah. I know. It's unfortunate. I can't fix it. So annoying. Hey, thank you for the resub. Getting close to 3 years. I appreciate it. Wow, 33 classes you've taken. And not one homework assignment completed. So I got my book scanner today, and I was so excited to start playing with it. And the instruction manual is in QR codes. So it's very, very frustrating. Actually, once I get around to the reading, yeah, okay, it's been years. So I'm trying to, I have to figure out how to get the, how to get it to scan and work. I'm not pleased, but it is what it is. I'll try to play around with it after stream. I'm just trying to do that so that I can scan my books and know exactly how many I have and what I have, because tomorrow I'm going to a giant book fair. Like, huge. I'm so excited. You have no idea. So excited that on my day off I'm getting up at 8 a.m. to go. How are you going to scan books when you're floating in the pool? See, this is why I'm doing it now. Because my pool's not open yet, because it's too cold. It's still too chilly. It still gets cold nights. So I'm hoping to open it in about 2 weeks. So I have 2 weeks to scan all of my books. Apparently, when my parents visited, when they went home, they told my sisters that I have an obscene number of books. It's not a convention really so much, so there's going to be no authors. It's just people donated books that you can buy. And it's massive. Like, there's going to be pretty much every genre you could think of. There's going to be rare books, collectibles, first editions and stuff. So I'm going to check that out. They're also going to have like vinyl and CDs and DVDs and such like that too. Large pool of books you could... Sadly, I don't think they have that. I didn't see it on the map. Where am I? Oh, that one's nonfiction. That's interesting. I'm trying to think. Where's my dashboard? There's the dashboard for that. Cool. Okay. What's the point then? I know. Okay, so we're going to continue on reading Monica and the Fifth by Brenda Page. Get my book out. and then we'll go from there. So we're on chapter 9. That's where we're starting. And let me bring my YouTube channel over so I could take a look. Because apparently I had a chatter there over the other day and I forgot. Hello, active camouflage. Beepity boopity. I need to learn how to merge my chats. Okay. Chapter 9. While the cat's away. That evening, however, let me give you a quick recap. So, last time we read, we learned all about Monica, how she came to the school. She had been expelled from her previous school because she cheated in math. The other girls didn't want to give her a chance. Their favorite student said give her a chance. They did. She's not the best student, but apparently she's really good in Latin. She doesn't know any French. She barely went to school before the last one. She seems to be very odd, and she is partnered with Nat for studying. Well, at the very end of last reading, Monica has made it her mission to help Nat achieve her dreams. And one of her dreams was to be one of the hi DT. One of her dreams was to be like one of the starters on the field hockey team. And so Monica made sure that happened by kidnapping the actual starter and locking her in the study area, in the study room, while the team was traveling to the game, so she got to play. But then when she found out why she got to play, she was very upset because Nat wanted to earn her spot on the team, which is right. She said, "What's the point of playing if I didn't earn it?" So Monica is confused by this, which makes me think she's either incredibly autistic and has no idea how to interact with people, or she's genuinely a sociopath, because she doesn't seem to have any like concern for other people. Like, she's trying to please people, but she has no like emotion. It's very interesting. And then after that, Nat's kind of ignoring her and wants nothing to do with her. And she decides that she's going to do absolutely nothing in class again, and has been separated from the other students because of it. So, let me take a sip of my tea and we will continue on. It ends with dinner hour the last time, and Monica doesn't show up to dinner, and it was sent to her instead. Chapter 9, While the Cat's Away. That evening, however, Nat and the Fifth had other things to think of besides their own particular black sheep and her delinquencies. Miss Julian and Miss Bennet were taking them to a large neighboring town, where a good class traveling company were giving a performance of one of the Shakespearean plays that the Fifth and the Sixth were studying that year, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Monica would have gone with the rest had she behaved herself that day, but now she was left behind. Considering this a sufficient punishment for her misdemeanors, Miss Bennet informed Monica just before the party set out that she was at liberty to leave the study and follow her ordinary pursuits. Oops. After Miss Bennet had gone, Monica still sat reading, but by 7:30 she had finished her book. It was an exciting story, and for a little while she had lost herself in its contents. Now she put it aside, and gazing round the study, she realized suddenly and overwhelmingly how quiet and lonely it was. For some minutes she sat brooding, but the silence and loneliness became more than she could bear, and springing to her feet she hurried out into the passage. How quiet it was in that part of the house! Not a single sound could be heard from any of the studies. Not a single crack of light shone from under their doors. Very soon, Monica reflected, the Fifth and Sixth would be enjoying themselves at the theater, laughing at the funny antics of Bottom and his fellow artisans. Well, she, Monica, could make her own fun. Walking to the end of the corridor, she heard the sound of voices in the common room. It would be the lower forms, just released from prep in their classrooms. During the winter months, their prep hours were from 5:30 to 7:30, and from then till 8:30 they were free to do what they pleased. She would join them. The fourth were a lively set, not nearly as stodgy as the conscientious fifth. It appeared that the netball champions of the fourth and third had called a meeting of their supporters. Pam's two independent younger sisters had never approved of their sister's inclusion in the hockey 11, especially Prue, the youngest. She was particularly indignant just now because the netball club had arranged their most important fixture for a date in the near future, and Pam had informed them that she would be unable to play, as St. Etheldreda's would be engaged in their third shield match on that very same day. Prue and the other netballites considered that they had just cause for grievance. As Monica quietly entered the room and took a seat, Prue was in the act of declaiming loudly, "No Preston was ever content to sit down with folded arms." Hello, active camouflage, I see you. No Preston was ever content to sit down with folded arms and, like Mr. Micawber, wait for something to turn up. Words are of no use. Have we not protested in vain? No, we have got to show them how much we resent it. Monica's eyes brightened. The evening need not be so dull after all. The opportunity for a little fun was there in front of her. She had only to grasp it. She rose to her feet and walked forward. Hi, Nathan. Yes, it's me. I'm here and on YouTube. As one of netball's most enthusiastic exponents, she interrupted. This was hardly true, but Prue and her friends were too much impressed by the long words to trouble about their accuracy. Hellocum. That's going to be my new phrase. Hello, welcome to class. Thank you for the follow age. I still don't have follow age set up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nathan. May I address a few words to the meeting? Prue hesitated. The new girl was reputed to be a bit queer, but after all, she had joined the netball club in spite of the fact that practically all the fifth played hockey. She had also played in the last netball match and had not acquitted herself badly, beyond breaking most of the rules in the game through ignorance or overexcitement. Prue mentally recalled Monica's part in the match. Yes, she had certainly been pulled up by the referee for running with the ball once or twice, for holding it longer than 3 seconds, for getting offside, and once for inadvertently kicking the ball. On the other hand, she had been extremely quick in running and jumping to intercept the ball, had held her passes well and passed quite accurately herself, and had seemed to enjoy the game thoroughly once she had got into it. Hello, Dustyville, welcome in. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen you. Yes, you can have your phone out, that's fine, as long as you're not playing on it. Right you are, said Prue, jumping down from the chair on which she was standing. Fire away. I don't want to say much, just 2 or 3 words, Monica replied modestly. Then, lowering her voice, she added in grave tones, Has it ever occurred to you what is the real object of the seniors? Her audience stared at Monica in perplexity. No, what do you mean? From Prue. Well, being a senior myself, Monica continued solemnly, I naturally hear more about their point of view than you girls in lower forms. I think they are working with the idea of making netball entirely subsidiary to hockey, just a form of exercise for the very youngest girls in the school, or even to abolish it altogether. They intend to make hockey the winter game of the school, and everybody above, say the second form, will be compelled to play it. The netballites looked at each other in horror. Prue shook with indignation. I shouldn't be surprised in the least if you are right, she declared. All the more reason why we should do something to show we are not going to be put down so easily. Can anyone suggest a plan? No one could, though all agreed emphatically, if vaguely, that something ought to be done. After a short silence, a few tentative suggestions were put forward, but rejected as not being suitable or feasible. Finally, the meeting came to an end with the resolution that another should be called in a day or two's time to see if fresh ideas were forthcoming, the members to rack their brains well in the meanwhile. Prue left the room arm in arm with her chief friend, lively Maggie Mellows. Monica caught them up outside, laying her hand on Prue's shoulder. "I say, Prue, I have an idea. Would you like to hear it?" Prue nodded eagerly. "Suppose we were to take all their hockey sticks and hide them," was Monica's suggestion. "Think what a stew they would all be in. If the sticks didn't turn up before match day, we could promise to find them on condition that Pam played in the netball match instead of the hockey match. It is quite easy to get hold of the sticks. They are all kept in the gym room." Prue's eyes began to sparkle. Then her face fell. "Yes, but where could we hide them so they couldn't be found? Short of digging a hole in the garden and burying them. And for that we've neither the time nor the tools. Where could we put them? They'll search everywhere, every nook and corner." Monica bent forward and whispered earnestly in the ears of the other two girls. When she had finished, Maggie was giggling and Prue smiling broadly. "It might work," Prue admitted. "They might not think of looking there. Anyway, it's rather a lark." "Who's going to do it?" asked Maggie. "One alone can't carry all the sticks." "I should think we three would be sufficient," replied Monica. "The fewer in the secret, the better. I shouldn't tell the other girls. A secret shared by so many would cease to be a secret, you know." "That's true," agreed Prue. "I'll go and get the key while the staff are still at dinner. I know just where it hangs in Miss Cazalet's room, 'cause I've fetched it for her more than once. You can skirmish around and see that there's no one hanging about near the gym room. With all the fifth and sixth away, it's an opportunity we shan't get again." The gym room, which was situated in the back of the building, was plunged in darkness. Maggie switched on the light at one end, and by the time Prue had joined them, holding up the key in triumph, she and Monica had noiselessly piled all the hockey sticks and pads they could find into 3 heaps on the floor. Maggie had also found 3 balls, one used for practices, the other 2 kept for matches. Each burdened with a heavy load, the 3 conspirators slipped out of the door that led from the gym room into the garden behind and vanished in the shadows. 10 minutes later they reappeared, and joining the girls who belonged to the indoor games club, played draughts or ludo in the library with serene and innocent faces till the supper bell rang. This cannot end well for them. Like, in all seriousness, how do they don't think they're going to get in trouble from the teachers? Like, is that not something they're concerned about at all? It's very odd to me to think that, but who knows? May take a sip of my tea again. Okay. While this dark deed was being planned and carried out at school, the innocent victims were enjoying themselves thoroughly at the theater. The only one whose thoughts were not given wholly to the play was Nat, and though she laughed as heartily as the rest when Bottom was translated into an ass, she could not keep herself from constantly wondering how the black sheep of the form was spending her lonely evening. The part of Puck was taken by a young girl, and somehow the slight, graceful little figure darting to and fro in the dimness of the stage, bent on impish mischief, reminded Nat of Monica. Many times she had seen the cold, unfriendly expression of her little face soften and sparkle with just that look of impish roguery. She pictured her sitting alone in the study all the evening with the hard, bored look on her small features, little dreaming that while the real Puck was busy laying traps for unsuspecting mortals on the stage, the other was similarly occupied at school. The curtain descended on the happily united lovers, rose again for the tedious, brief scene of young Paramus and his beloved Thisbe, and descended for the last time on Puck's good night to his audience. Laughing and chattering, blinking and yawning, the party of schoolgirls caught the last train home, and by the time they entered the gates of St. Etheldreda's, the clock in the steeple of the parish church was striking 11:30, an extraordinary time for St. Etheldreda's girls to be out of their beds. "Hot cocoa and sandwiches will be served in the library, girls," said Miss Julian, smiling at all the bright, happy faces round her as they trooped into the hall. "Then I shall expect you all to get to bed, and to sleep as quickly and with as little noise or commotion as possible. No chattering in the dormitories, mind." There was a chorus of promises of obedience to the principal's wishes, and when the cocoa and sandwiches had been disposed of round the still glowing fire in the library, there was a general movement for bed. As Nat was on her way upstairs, she slipped into the passage on to which the studies opened, intending to fetch a pair of indoor shoes which she had left in her room. To her amazement, a shaft of light shone beneath the door. Had Monica forgotten to switch off the light before leaving? Had it been overlooked by the mistress who made her nightly round to see that no lights were left burning? Hurriedly she pushed open the door and gave a gasp of amazement to find the room occupied. Monica sat there, huddled up in a chair, with her elbows propped on her knees and her chin in her hands, staring fixedly at the opposite wall and apparently lost in thought or dreams. On the table in front of her lay what looked like an oblong piece of cardboard, but a second glance proved to be a picture or photograph. "Whatever are you doing here?" exclaimed Nat. "Why aren't you in bed?" As Nat spoke, Monica turned the photograph over so that it lay face downwards. "I did go up when bed bell went," she explained. "I was the only one in the dormitory, and it seemed so queer and lonely that after Miss Moore had come round and put out the lights, I crept down here again and read until I heard you come in. I was just going upstairs again." It was rather a shame being the only one left out of it, Nat agreed. Then, touched by Monica's forlorn words and look, she added impulsively, I'm sorry I made such a fuss over that business about Irene and the hockey match. I expect I sounded an awful prig. Let's forget it, shall we? I'd much rather be in my own study with you, even with all those horrible things on the walls, than pushing myself in with other girls who don't really want me, nice though they are about it, and where there isn't room for my big feet." Monica made no reply. She picked up the piece of cardboard from the table and was unconsciously twisting and turning it between her fingers, her head lowered so that her face could not be seen. In the bright electric light, Nat saw a tear splash on the polished surface of the little table. "I say," she exclaimed, alarmed, "you're never crying, are you? Don't you feel well, or something?" Monica looked up, blew her nose vigorously, and laughed, though her eyelashes were wet. "No, I'm not crying," she averred, "and I don't feel in the least ill. All the same, I'm glad I shall have somebody to talk to tomorrow. It was miserable sitting here alone all day." "That's all right, then," said Nat cheerfully. "Now hurry up and come along to bed, or we'll get into a row." She switched off the light, and in another minute they had gained the dormitory, where the rest of its occupants, tired and sleepy, were already tumbling into bed. Nat saw Monica into her cubicle, then nodded a cheery good night and pulled back the curtains over the entrance. Monica drew out the photograph she had tucked under her arm, looked at it, and sighed. Then she dropped it into one of her drawers, pulled off her clothes, and slipped into a bed a second before Miss Bennet looked in at the dormitory door and said, "Good night, all," and switched off the light. In spite of that sigh, Monica dropped off to sleep almost as soon as her head touched the pillow. I thought I heard a bug above me. The pleasant recollection of Nat's cheerful face and wide smile she pulled back the curtain was her last mental vision before she lost consciousness. Nat was not so lucky. A tiresome knot in a string nearly delayed her nearly 5 minutes, with the result that she had to finish undressing in the dark, finally falling to sleep blissfully unaware that the stockings she had pulled off and aimed at the chair at random had, instead of finding their true destination, dropped with uncanny precision into the water jug and its liquid contents. This stuff always happens to Nat. I feel so bad for her. Drinking my tea. Chapter 10. Lost, stolen, or strayed. The next day was wet, so that the girls were obliged to amuse themselves indoors in their recreation time. Consequently, there was no hockey practice, but it was not long before someone noticed the absence of the sticks from their accustomed place in the corner of the gym. Half a dozen girls of the 5th and 6th, who were considered old enough to use the apparatus without the supervision of a mistress, having enjoyed themselves there that afternoon. When it was realized that the sticks really had been spirited away by some mysterious agency, and that nobody had the least idea where they were, there was a considerable sensation in the ranks of the hockey club members. "Can it be burglars?" one fourth former suggested. "They might have broken into the school during the night." "Burglars? Nonsense," replied Madge briskly. "What burglar would bother to break into a place just to steal a pile of old hockey sticks? No, somebody has hidden them for a lark." "But who?" demanded Deirdre. "And where?" A group of girls in the gym room looked at each other in perplexity. "It's my opinion," Irene said shrewdly, "that some of the netball girls have done it to annoy us. You know how indignant they were because Pam consented to play for us." This was voted the most sensible suggestion yet preferred. "If that's so, then Prue Preston knows something about it," Deirdre declared. "She's the ringleader of the 4th. "Yes," added Irene, "and was done while all the seniors were at the play, depend upon it." Some of the girls departed to see if they could learn anything from the 4th or 3rd, while the rest scattered far and wide to search every spot where the sticks might possibly be hidden. Half an hour later they drifted back to the gym room to report failure in every direction. The 4th and 3rd forms, not to mention the 2nd, had stoutly denied all knowledge of the missing sticks, and seemed as genuinely surprised at their disappearance as the seniors themselves, though the netball players seemed amused at the news. As for Prue Preston, everybody affirmed that she had been with the rest of the 4th all the evening after prep time, first in the common room at a meeting and then playing draughts with the indoor games club. Monica Carr had also been with them. T-Bell put an end to the search, but it is to be feared that the prep of many of the 6th and 5th suffered that night from the lack of the usual time and care bestowed upon it. Girls gathered in groups in each other's studies, still discussing the mystery and suggesting hiding places, but all efforts proved fruitless. One or two lucky girls, who had not put their sticks back in their proper places after the last game, still retained possession of them, but 2 people alone could not play hockey, and until the rest of the sticks turned up there could be neither practice nor match. The second day was also wet, and Madge and Deirdre organized a thorough search of the whole premises, resolving that should the sticks be anywhere within the school bounds, they should be unearthed. The end of the search found a hot, dusty, tired, and short-tempered band of hunters. No success had rewarded their efforts, and to add to their humiliation, numbers of smiling netball players had followed them everywhere, offering various absurd suggestions and displaying obvious delight in their quandary. "Hello, Francis. Welcome in." "I don't believe they are hidden in the school," Madge declared. "Is there any place we haven't searched? Of course, we can't go poking our noses into mistresses' rooms, but then they can't be there. Did you search the box rooms thoroughly?" 2 exceedingly grubby and dusty 5th formers stoutly affirmed that they had looked into every box and trunk, even the hat boxes, and that not a spider nor a cobweb had escaped their eyes. Glenda, Irene, and several others had searched all the dormitories, examining wardrobes and doors and peering under the beds. Madge had even inquired of the kitchen staff if they had seen any traces of the sticks in their domains, and had been informed with cheerful smiles that no one had seen them since the gym room had last been swept. "I hope," Madge added, with a gallant attempt to be frivolous, "the cook didn't think I was accusing her—" "Oh, it's raining." "Accusing her of having designs on our sticks for firewood, or even for serving up in the stews." No one laughed, however. The matter was too serious. "What annoys me most," said Glenda stormily, is that crowd of netballites following us round with broad grins on their faces. I'm quite sure they know something about it, in spite of their denials. I searched their cubicles well, but with no results. After all, you can't hide a score of hockey sticks in any nook and cranny, or even one stick for that matter. Nat and Monica were there, both having been as indefatigable in the search as anyone. Monica was humming a tune from the Mikado under her breath, and now and again breaking into words, "Here's a howdy-do, here's a pretty state of things." Then Deirdre arrived on the scene and reported that she had bearded the lion in his den, the lion being the head gardener and groundsman, a particularly surly and cross-grained person, and had even persuaded him to unlock the gardener's shed and allow her to go inside. "We looked in the bicycle shed," concluded Deirdre. "As for the garden, they weren't hidden under the winter greens, which are about all there is growing in it this time of year, and Baines got quite annoyed when I suggested they had been buried in the soil, and said nobody had been digging in his garden unbeknown to him, and we needn't look forward to a spring crop of hockey sticks. The flowers that bloom in the spring, tra-la, have nothing to do with the case," hummed Monica, breaking into a new tune. Nat seized her by the arm and pulled her up into the passage. "Look here, you imp of mischief," she said in a fierce whisper. "I believe you're at the bottom of the whole affair. You were here while we went to the play. Tell me, where have you hidden them?" "Nowhere," retorted Monica. "They aren't hidden at all." Pulling her arm away, she walked off singing softly, "Beautiful Mabel, would if I could, but I am not able," and leaving Nat to stare after her and rub her nose in greater perplexity than ever. During the whole of that October week it rained continuously, as it not unfrequently does in October, and the girls were obliged to remain indoors most of the time. In addition to this, Miss Cazalet, the games and drills mistress, was confined to her room with an attack of influenza. So the members of the staff were not surprised at there being no hockey practices, and were not aware of the mysterious disappearance of the hockey sticks, while the girls, both because they preferred to tackle their own problems and also because they did not like to be made to look ridiculous, did not carry any complaints to them about it. I would have immediately complained to the teachers. I guess I'm just one of those people. I would have just immediately gone. I'm drinking the Gatorade that my dad didn't drink while he was here. It's 0 sugar, though. They knew not now that it was the work of the netball players, or some of them, for the morning following the search, Madge had found in her study a dirty, begrimed sheet of paper with the following message inscribed on it in straggling printed characters: "If the netball captain will promise to play for her team in the next match," it's all spelled incorrectly, "the missing articles will be found. Signed, no one who knows. P.S. She must write her name in the team on the notice board." The 5th and 6th surveyed this illiterate epistle with disgust. "It's positively childish, writing such nonsense to us," declared Madge. "Anyone would think we were kids in the 2nd form, whose favorite recreation was playing at Red Indians. I am convinced this is the work of that harum-scarum young sister of yours, Pam." Pam herself, who in her time had been one of the biggest pickles in the school, and who even now, when she had attained the dignity of the 6th, regarded life more or less as a joke, chuckled delightedly. "Shouldn't be surprised. She's just like I was when I was her age. Mischievous lot of young imps." That week was decidedly a trying one for all those in authority. Never had the 5th prepared their work in such a careless, slovenly manner. Never had the 3rd and 4th been more restless and inattentive and brimming over with mischief. Even the select little band of 6th formers, never noted for overworking themselves, seemed to have caught some of the prevailing atmosphere of restlessness. Miss Bennet, who was not very interested in the girls, beyond seeing that they worked well and adhered rigidly to the school rules, put it down to the incessantly wet weather. Miss Cazalet, who took more interest in the girls' pursuits outside lesson hours than any of the other mistresses, was still in bed. Punishments were more numerous that week than usual. The prefects found it difficult to maintain their dignity and authority in the face of the smiles and giggles of the younger girls. By the end of the week, tempers were becoming frayed, especially when, at the prefect's weekly meeting, the principal observed that some of the girls in the school seemed to have got a little out of hand that week, and gently suggested that the prefects should use every effort to get things running more smoothly. Madge was greatly tempted to explain the reason for all the disturbance, but refrained, for during recent years it had been the prefects' unwritten law never to take their troubles to the principal unless they had failed entirely to master them themselves. When Miss Julian had dismissed the meeting, they held a gathering of their own in the study shared by Madge and Deirdre. A silly sort of mess we're in, the usually placid-tempered Deirdre declared disgustedly. This is Friday and the match is next Wednesday, and still we can only muster a couple of sticks between the lot of us. Not only that, but those juniors are getting a good deal too big for their boots. Positively cheeky this last week. If we give in to them now, said Madge tragically, our prestige is gone forever. All for nothing, too, said Pam, still more amused than annoyed. I've just had a letter by the afternoon post canceling the netball match. Our opponents can't play next Wednesday, after all, and their secretary suggests another date, the following Saturday or Wednesday. At this point in the discussion, there came a knock at the door, and in walked Allison. I've left the swatting for a bit, she explained with a cheerful smile. I heard Prinny had given you a wigging at the prefect's meeting, so I simply had to come along and see if I could be of any use. Otherwise, a sheer farce calling myself the head girl. We didn't want to disturb you, knowing how busy you are with your scholarship work, said Madge ruefully. You know we promised you at the beginning of the term we would take everything off your shoulders. Yes, but when things aren't going very smoothly, I couldn't stand aside. Not for 50 scholarships, Allison declared with energy. She perched on the edge of the table. What's the trouble? Haven't those missing sticks turned up yet? No, replied Madge, and explained the recent developments, showing Allison with rather a sheepish air the document sent by one who knows. Allison could not help chuckling as she read it. They're holding hostages for you, Pam, she said. Then, her expression becoming more thoughtful, she added, Did you say the netball match is postponed? Pam nodded and showed Allison the letter she had received from the opposing netball secretary. Allison looked at the mysterious epistle from the one who knows. Hello, Matsu. Welcome in. Thank you for the raid. How are you doing? How was your stream? Hope everyone is doing well. We are continuing with Monica and the Fifth. Let's see who came in with you. Hello, Zen. How are you? You were not pleased by the movie? Why not? For those who don't follow Matsu, please go drop a follow to him. He's also a reader. They cut out all the best parts of the book. Oh. The movie adaptation of Prince of Zenda made some questionable choices. I'm sure. Movie adaptations are never that good. They just aren't. There's a grand total of 2 movies that I've watched that were perfect compared to the books. And even then, one of them was slightly different. So Chocolat had Johnny Depp in it and whatnot. It's about a chocolatier in France and her, like, patisserie or whatever chocolate shop that she opened. And her daughter, I read the book before I saw that. Wait, no, what did I do? I can't remember, but there's a book and a movie, and I either watched the movie or read the book first, and my friend did the opposite. And so we were arguing that the little girl's imaginary friend, Pantouf, was a rabbit or a kangaroo. In the book, I believe it's a kangaroo, and in the movie, it's a rabbit. That was the only difference. So I kept telling her she was crazy, and she was telling me I was crazy. Technically, we're both right. The other one that is absolutely perfect is Holes. That book and that movie are perfect. And the only difference in that one, and I think it was brilliantly done, the only difference is that in the book, Stanley Yelnats is fat in the beginning. And by the end, he loses a lot of weight. And the director did not want Shia LaBeouf, who was playing Stanley Yelnats, he did not want him to gain weight for the role and then lose it because it was unhealthy for a kid. So that is the only difference, and everything else was perfect. I love that book and I love that movie. Those were just, phenomenal. And like, that's a change that I can understand them not doing. Like, okay, he was fat and then he lost weight because of everything that was going on. Cool. But was it necessary to the story? Not really. The rest of the story was the majority of the story was based on the fact that ear blowing, please. Hello, boy. Thank you for the first chat. I don't really do ear blowing, but I don't have my 3DO mic. So hopefully that was okay. Here, while I'm talking, I'll do some finger taps. I don't even know if it comes through when I blow on the mic. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the whole basis of the story was the fact that Stanley's no good great great grandfather didn't finish his deal with Lady Zeroni, Madame Zeroni. He didn't end his bargain with her, but the other should. Oh, the mic, yeah, that one I can't set up during stream. It's just too much work. So yeah. I'll see if I could try blowing one more time. Oh no, it kind of mutes it. Oh yeah, Princess Bride is good too. That's a phenomenal movie. Yeah. That's pretty much it, yeah. That one's really good. I forgot about that one. But that movie, even without the book, is just fantastic. Okay, let's continue on. See what we can do for the rest of the stream. Allison, one who knows couldn't help reading it. Did you say the netball match is postponed? Pam nodded and showed Allison the letter. Oh, for those just coming in, Monica, she along with Prue and Maggie from the fourth form stole the field hockey sticks. So. Pam nodded and showed Allison the letter she had received from the opposing netball secretary. Allison again looked at the mysterious epistle from The One Who Knows. She gave a little laugh. It's simple enough, she said. Accept their proposal as gracefully as possible. As the netball match is postponed, Pam can turn out for both teams without upsetting anyone. They on their side must keep their bargain and return the sticks if Pam promises to play in the next netball match, as it says here. Then I hope it will be a case of all's well that ends well. Why, of course that's the way out, cried Madge. What muffs we were not to think of it ourselves. Well, I think you were, said Allison candidly. Perhaps Pam had better not mention at first that the netball match has been postponed. Then their disappointment will be greater when they still haven't got their own way entirely, and Pam is still playing for the hockey team. Already faces were brightening. "Thanks awfully for your help, Allison," said Deirdre. "You are a brick." "No," replied Allison, "not a bit of it. It's you who are the bricks for not wanting to worry me with prefect's affairs. I do appreciate it, I can tell you. Suppose you all come along to my study and have a cup of tea. I've a cake just sent from home, and I think I can persuade Ethel to let me have the tea on a tray from the kitchen." The prefects accepted the invitation with alacrity. Before the day was ended, a list appeared upon the notice board headed "Team chosen to play in the netball match against St. Margaret's," and against the position of goal defender appeared Pam Preston's name. Hello, Raiden, in YouTube chat. I am reading a book, Monica and the Fifth. That's what I'm chatting about. There was great excitement in the group of netball players who had gathered round to read it. "Pam's playing," Prue declared excitedly to Maggie. "They've given in." Though Prue had followed Monica's advice and had not divulged the hiding place of the sticks to any of her other followers, of course they all knew by now that she was one of the instigators of the plot. There was no need for any more secrecy. Very soon the facts would be known to the whole school, so she and Maggie lost no time in satisfying the curiosity of their companions, and related the story to an admiring and appreciative audience, and with a considerable amount of complacency on the part of the narrators. Going to their study directly after breakfast the next morning, Madge and Deirdre found another sheet of dirty notepaper lying conspicuously on the table, and quickly read the following message. "Although the swimming barf is closed at the end of Sept, no doubt most of the Hockey 11 are in need of a good wash. One who knows." The swimming barf? The swimming bath? I must mean swimming bath. Madge's face was a study. The slower-witted Deirdre merely looked dazed. "Well, if we aren't a set of prize idiots," spluttered Madge at last. "No one ever thought of looking in the swimming bath. That's where our sticks are. Just because it's been closed and locked up for the winter, we didn't give it a thought. Besides, who would dream of hiding anything in the swimming bath? And we went so near. We searched the gardener's shed and looked under all the cabbages." For a moment, conflicting emotions struggled for the mastery. Then her sense of humor prevailed, and she burst into a roar of laughter. Deirdre, recovering from her bewilderment, followed her companion's example, for nothing is more infectious than laughter, and the two girls sat and rocked till the tears rolled down their cheeks. "How are we going to get them?" asked Deirdre, wiping the tears from her eyes. "The baths are locked up now." "Miss Cazalet has the key," Madge replied. "She is better and is getting up today. We'll ask her for the key and tell her the whole story. She'll enjoy the joke immensely, I know. To think how we searched every impossible chink and cranny in the building, where one couldn't hide a pencil, let alone a hockey stick." And Madge went off into a fresh gale of laughter. Ugh. Can I get a bot removal? Be gone, bot. Thank you, Crusader. Oh, that's cool. The swimming bath, which was situated in the farthest corner of the grounds, and certainly in a rather remote spot, was duly entered, and there were all the missing sticks, lying just as they had been dropped in the deepest end of the white-tiled tank. Each owner seized her own particular stick with a delightful feeling of familiarity at holding a much-tried and well-known weapon in her hands again. The gray rain clouds had lifted, the rain had stopped, and the rays of the sun were flooding the watery fields with pale but welcome light. With joyous cheers and feeling as if they had been let out of prison, the girls made a beeline for the hockey field, and unhindered by the fact that the rain had long since washed out all the marks, were soon waging a pitched battle with tremendous enthusiasm and energy. I thought all along you had a hand in it, Nat declared that evening, as she and Monica were hard at work. But you said the sticks weren't hidden anywhere. No more they were. No one who walked into the baths could fail to see them. I'm all the more convinced that I daren't let you out of my sight. You see what invariably happens when I do. The other girls in the fifth don't know whether to be annoyed with you or not. Irene does, replied Monica. She still doesn't like me at all. She critically surveyed the latest notice she was printing for the study wall with her head on one side and added happily, "Wait till I come out on top. She'll dislike me more still then." "Did you hear about Allison going to the prefect's meeting to help them?" asked Nat eagerly. And when Monica shook her head, she related the incident, quoting Allison's words about not standing outside when things were going wrong, not for 50 scholarships. Nat spoke with a glowing face and eyes alight with hero worship. "It's just like Allison. It's true, too. That's why we would do anything for her when she was head girl last year and worked so hard for the school. Why, we think so much of her now." Chapter 11. The Telegram. Uh-oh. Peace and harmony reigned supreme at St. Etheldrada's during the next few weeks, for the girls simply had no time to get into mischief, every minute of the day being fully occupied. Work, of course, came first, and the term examinations, which took place the second weekend in December, loomed appreciably nearer. Girls who had slacked at the beginning of the term decided that it behooved them to work harder if they did not wish to take home a poor report at Christmas. The Dramatic Society, with Glenda as a shining star, Glenda, who had set her heart on becoming a silver medalist that year, was busy preparing various scenes from Shakespeare which they hoped to perform on Speech Day. With the improvement in the weather, out-of-door pursuits were booming. Groups of girls took long country walks while games were in full swing. Suddenly hailing and thundering? Oh gosh, I hope you are careful. We had a lot of rain today, but it came in a sudden burst. Let me see. Let me look at the forecast for the week. I think tomorrow it's supposed to be different. Tomorrow, cool and rain. See, this is why I can't open the pool. Friday, 64 degrees with a low of 51. Saturday, 59 with a low of 46 and rain. Sunday, 54 with a low of 47 and rain. Monday, 61, low of 46. Yeah, I still can't open my pool. It'll probably be more towards the end of the month. And actually, while I'm sitting here reading, nope, that's causing more chaos than it's worth it. I'm causing chaos. Okay. There were no more quarrels between the netball and hockey clubs. The latter's hopes of gaining the shield were high, for should they win their next match, they would be entitled to meet the victors in the other section, Fairhurst Priory, the present holders, in the final. On Friday morning, the day before the match, the postman was rather earlier than usual, and Irene happened to be the only girl near the door to see him arrive, though usually he was accosted by an expectant crowd. She seized hold of the bundle of letters to take them into the hall, where they were spread on the table for their owners to claim. On the top of the bundle was a letter addressed to Miss M. Carr in extremely black square handwriting that set a chord of remembrance vibrating in Irene's mind. In a flash she recollected where she had seen it before. Here was another letter to Monica from the girl Lillian at Fairhurst Priory School. Before Irene had finished spreading the letters on the table, it was surrounded by a crowd of girls eagerly searching for their own names. while from others who were unable to get close enough to see there came a chorus of inquiry. One thought only was running like a flame through Irene's mind. Could she by any chance get a glimpse of the contents of Monica's letter? She waited by the table till most of the crowd had dispersed. At last she saw Monica, one of the latecomers, saunter into the hall with Nat, and at a cry of, "Letter for you, Monica. Aren't you going to claim it?" fetch her letter from the table. One of the floofs is at the door. As she did so, the prayer bell rang, and Monica and Nat, with Irene close behind, joined the stream of girls hastening towards the assembly room. Prayer bell rang at 5 to 9 in order to give everyone time to be in her place for 9 o'clock prayers. When the girls filed off to their various classrooms, and Irene watched Monica, as seated at her desk waiting for the entry of the mistress, who was to take them for their first lesson, she tore open the envelope, hurriedly read the letter, and, on Miss Moore's entry, thrust it inside her desk. The present style of frocks rarely provides anything in the way of pocket accommodation, even in the 1920s. Give us our pockets. When the bell rang for the 15 minutes interval, all the form left the room in groups of 2s and 3s, some to practice passing or shooting outside with the netball, some to stroll around the grounds chatting, many to partake of hot milk and biscuits. Irene stayed behind under pretense of hunting for a mislaid book. Now, when the room was deserted by all except herself, was her chance. She opened Monica's desk, and after a hasty search found the letter thrust between 2 books. With the envelope in her hand, she hesitated and glanced around guiltily. "Hello, Sakura. Welcome to class. Thank you for the follow." With the envelope in her hand, she hesitated and glanced around guiltily, half inclined to put it back unread. Then came the insidious whisper that she owed it to the other girls, to the school, to read the letter, and discover if the black sheep of St. Etheldreda's was plotting some fresh mischief against her fellow scholars. Spurred on by this thought, she inserted her fingers in the envelope and drew out the letter. This time its contents were disappointing. They were brief and written very hurriedly. "Dear Monica, please excuse me for being so long in acknowledging your letter. Your idea about the telegram is really clever, though quite simple." Oh no. "I shall be curious to see how it works. I suppose St. Etheldreda's girls are hoping to win the shield. So are our girls. Well, time will show. Supper bell, so I must finish. I will write a longer letter next time. The news may be more interesting then. With best wishes from Lillian." The telegram from the other school. Oh my God. If Monica sent that and they skipped the match. Oh my God. When she had finished reading in this apparently quite harmless little letter, Irene was conscious of a fervent wish that she had not meddled with it at all. She thrust it back into Monica's desk, and with cheeks that burned for some time afterward, slipped out of the classroom and rejoined her friends, who were partaking of milk and biscuits. That evening the atmosphere in Nat's study was particularly serene. No clouds disturbed Nat's horizon, for once again her name had appeared in the team for the shield match. Not, it is true, in Irene's place, but instead of the other wing, whose play Deirdre and the hockey committee now considered inferior to Nat's. As this was the second time she had been chosen to represent the school, Nat now cherished the hope that her permanent place in the team was assured. She was doing her prep with prodigious pains, anxious to run no risk of getting a returned lesson or lines the next morning. So blissful was her state of mind that she even assisted Monica to hang a fresh set of recently taught data upon the walls, and afterwards volunteered to hear her construe her Latin paragraph. Monica, too, seemed to be in a blithe and happy mood, for she made numerous jokes and witticisms as she worked, without any traces of the old, sullen, defiant expression. When in a laughing, happy frame of mind, she really was quite an attractive girl, Nat thought to herself. What a pity it was she was prone to those queer moods and tempers. Lessons went well and smoothly next morning. Even Miss Bennet wore a beaming smile as she dismissed the fifth when the final bell rang, with her best wishes for their success that afternoon. Then there came a general scramble for the dormitories and hasty change into sports rig-out for the team and the girls who had obtained permission to accompany them as spectators, who were to depart by train as soon as dinner was over. Allison was changing in her cubicle when Pam tapped and poked her head inside. "Prinny wants you, Allison," she said. "A telegram has just arrived for you." Allison looked up, surprised. "A telegram? Who from, I wonder? I'm not expecting any important tidings." "Not bad news, I hope," said Pam, sympathetically, as Allison hurried out. "Oh, no." "Is this what it's about?" Oh, my God. Please not Allison. Miss Julian was in her room. "Oh, there you are, Allison," she said. "A telegram has just come for you." And she picked it up from the table. Allison took it and tore it open quickly. Miss Julian at once noticed a change in her expression. "Is it bad news, Allison?" she inquired with concern. Allison nodded. "I'm afraid so," she replied in a low voice, and she handed the telegram to the principal, who read the brief message. "Mother taken ill suddenly. Come at once. We'll meet you at Victoria next train. Father." "This is very sudden, Allison," said Miss Julian gravely. "You have had no previous apprehensions concerning your mother's health, have you?" "No," replied Allison, her voice shaking a little. "When I last heard from home, Mother was perfectly well. I may go, may I not, Miss Julian?" The principal was already turning over the leaves of her timetable. "Yes, of course, Allison," she replied, "and we will hope that things may turn out less serious than might be imagined from this telegram. The next train for London leaves at 1:45. There will just be time for you to have your dinner, pack a few necessities for the night, and catch the train. Do not trouble about packing much. We can soon send on anything you may require later." "Thank you, Miss Julian," replied Allison gratefully, and still feeling stunned at the suddenness and the vagueness of the news contained in the telegram. She hurried back to her cubicle to pull off her tunic, resume her ordinary frock, and throw a few things she would need into a small hand suitcase. She then sought out Deirdre and told her of her urgent and immediate summons to London. "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Deirdre at once. "Can't I do anything? Help you pack?" "No, thanks all the same. I'm not taking much with me. Only just got time to swallow some dinner. Prinny insists on it. Then rush for my train. Sorry I have to let the team down like this." And Allison was gone, leaving the dismayed hockey captain to dash around the school, hunting out another recruit for the team. At length she ran down one of the fourth form players. "Get into your tunic, Olive, will you?" she said peremptorily. "I want you to come as reserve. Lorna, who is down as reserve, will be playing after all." Bad tidings travel quickly. In a very few minutes, an excited little group of hockey players, who had gathered in the hall to await the dinner bell, were discussing the bad news in dismay. "Oh, dear," said Glenda, as Madge gave them the details. "What hard luck for Allison. I do hope her mother's illness isn't serious. Rotten luck for us, though. For us, too, though, of course. We shan't mind if things come right for Allison. I'm afraid it means losing the match today. Allison at center half is as good as half a dozen ordinary players, and we've no one to put in her place." The girls nodded with grave faces. Allison's presence in the team did indeed make all the difference, for she was a tower of strength in the defense, her judgment in popping up just where the ball was coming being positively uncanny. Her passes to her forwards were generally inspired, as Deirdre once said, and the fiercer the opposition, the higher the level of play Allison seemed able to obtain. Last, but by no means least, her presence in the team acted as a kind of moral support to the rest of the players. With these thoughts in their minds, the girls looked at each other in dismayed silence. It was indeed hard luck. Just when they had begun to believe that their dreams of seeing the shield, the property of St. Etheldreda's, had an excellent chance of becoming a reality. Glenda was suddenly recalled to the present by a fierce and decidedly painful grip on her arm. "Ow!" she gasped. "Who's pinching me?" And turned round to behold Irene standing at her elbow and wearing such a transformed expression, her face white with emotion, her eyes blazing with excitement, that she exclaimed in astonishment, "What's the matter, Irene? Have you just seen a ghost, or what?" telegram, stuttered Irene, speaking with a visible effort. I've just remembered that the letter mentioned a telegram. What telegram? What letter? You're speaking in riddles. Irene still seemed in the grip of some great emotion. Wait here, all of you, she cried. Don't move till I come back. I'll explain then. And with that she dashed off like a mad creature into the annex, and along to her study, seized her writing case, and recklessly tossed out its contents till her finger closed on the object of her search, the letter she had taken from Monica's study on the memorable afternoon when she had been locked in her own room. With the letter firmly clutched in her hand, she tore back to her mystified audience. It's one of Monica's letters, she explained jerkily. I found it weeks ago, and I read it by mistake. And because I thought it sounded so suspicious, and because we all know what sort of girl she is, I thought I was justified in keeping it. Listen, and I'll read it out. And while the girls were still trying to grasp what she had just said, she read the letter in a voice that shook both with emotion and lack of breath. But surely, Madge, who had joined the group with Deirdre, began doubtfully, as Irene stopped reading. Wait till I finished, Irene interrupted. That isn't all. Yesterday I saw another letter of Monica's in the same handwriting lying about, and oh, I don't care what you think of me for doing it, but I read that one too. I can only say I thought it might be for the best. I was ashamed then, now I'm glad I did. As nearly as I can remember, it said this. And Irene, who was gifted with a good memory, repeated the gist of the contents of the second letter. Don't you see? They were plotting to knock St. Etheldrada's out of the running for the shield. Monica Carr would love to spite the school like that. She hates us all, and she doesn't know what it means to be sporting. She was clever enough to realize that our chance of winning would be a poor one without Allison, and so she planned to entice her away by a bogus telegram. The telegram referred to in the second letter is the telegram Allison has just received. Madge looked incredulous. But it can't be. It sounds like an old-fashioned melodrama. Besides, where was that telegram handed in? Deirdre shook her head. Somewhere in London, I believe. But you don't really think Irene's idea is true, Madge? Madge glanced down at the letter Irene had handed her. I don't know what to think, she confessed vexedly. If it does happen to be a bogus telegram, then we shall be made fools of, and Allison will have suffered all this anxiety for nothing. On the other hand, Allison must go if there's a chance of its being genuine. She daren't risk it. The fact that her mother may be seriously ill means more to her than all the hockey in the world. Oh, bother, there's the dinner bell. What shall we do? I think it's a case for Miss Julian, said Deirdre decidedly, and there were murmurs of relieved acquiescence from the other girls. You're right, cried Madge. Come along with me, Irene, and Miss Julian will advise us what to do. Dinner must wait for once. Irene followed her willingly, for to do her justice, she was ready enough to own up to the ignominy of prying into another girl's correspondence, if by doing so she might prevent them all from walking into a trap carefully laid for them. Nat and Glenda, too anxious to trouble about breaking the rules of punctuality at meals, followed them instead of making the dining hall, and waited in the passage while they entered the principal's sanctum. Miss Julian listened patiently as Irene repeated her story, and though she was doubtless very much amazed at hearing such an extraordinary tale, she showed few signs of it in her quiet face, and quickly grasped the essential points of the case from Irene's sketchy and incoherent narrative. Allison must go unless we can verify beyond any doubt the falsity of the summons, she said, with decision as soon as Irene had finished. However, I expect I can learn the truth from Monica herself. Will you fetch her, Madge? But no, wait one moment. Do you know if Allison's people are on the phone? Madge started forward, her eyes lighting up. Why, yes, Miss Julian, I'm sure they are. I never thought of the phone. Remember, at this point, phones are not common, which is why they're still selling telegrams, which is why it would be very odd for them to receive a telegram. I'm so thirsty today. Okay. Miss Julian smiled as she lifted down her telephone directory, and her fingers swiftly turned over the pages. It is the most obvious and the simplest expedients that usually are overlooked, Madge, she remarked, especially by highly intellectual people. Yes, I have the number. She turned to the telephone by the wall. Irene, find Allison and bring her here, please. Should the telegram prove genuine, there will still be time for her to catch her train. If the telephone exchange do not keep us waiting too long. Irene ran off. 5 slow minutes ticked by while the two in the room waited, Miss Julian in undisturbed calm, outwardly at any rate, Madge in a fever of impatience which she could hardly control. At last the telephone bell rang sharply, and Miss Julian picked up the receiver with a murmured, "We are fortunate after all." Just then Irene burst with scant ceremony into the room to halt and stand in silence as the principal began to speak into the mouthpiece. "This is the principal of St. Etheldreda's. Who am I addressing? No, you need not disturb him. I only wish to know how Mrs. Ravenel is. Yes. You see, Allison has received a telegram summoning her at once to London on account of her mother's sudden illness. Yes, this morning handed in at Victoria. Yes, we had reason to believe it a bogus telegram. No, but I think it will be easy to find out. Then there is no need for Allison to come? Ah, thank you. That is all I wanted to know. Perhaps Allison can ring you up herself later on. Good morning." As she finished, she wheeled round sharply. "You were right, Irene. Allison's people have no knowledge of the telegram. Where is Allison? Has she gone?" "Yes, Miss—" Oh, sorry, I can't try to read faster. "Yes, Miss Julian," Irene hastened to say. "She had just left the dining room when I got there. I hurried to her study in her cubicle, but she wasn't there. Then one of the maids told me she had already set off for the station." "We must stop her from going if possible," said Miss Julian. "It will save her a useless journey as well as unnecessary anxiety." "Glenda and Nat are outside," interposed Irene eagerly. "They both have bicycles in use. Shall I tell them to cycle to the station and stop Allison?" Miss Julian nodded approval without inquiring what Nat and Glenda were doing outside in the passage when they should have been at dinner. And 2 minutes later both girls, hatless and gloveless, having stopped only to snatch their coats, were wheeling their machines out of the bicycle shed. In another 2 minutes they were pedaling furiously down the road that led to the station. The school was perhaps a mile and a half from the station, and fortunately the road, even when it passed through the town, was not much frequented by traffic, for Nat and Glenda paused for nothing their headlong career, and did not slacken speed for a second till they jammed on their brakes and flung themselves off before the station entry. "It's all right," gasped Nat, pointing to the station clock. 5 minutes yet before the train is due. My, didn't we scorch! I bet we could have given Jehu himself a start and then beaten him." Allison was standing at the ticket office in the act of asking for her ticket when both her arms were seized from behind her, and she was violently dragged away, to the astonishment of the booking clerk. Jerking herself round, she beheld the crimson but familiar faces of the two St. Etheldreda's girls. "No need to take a ticket, Allison," cried Glenda. "The telegram was a fake. Prinny phoned through to your home. There's nothing whatever the matter with your mother." The worried, anxious look vanished from Allison's face and was replaced by a dawning expression of joy and relief. "Are you sure?" she demanded. "Absolutely sure," replied Nat. "Prinny sent us after you post-haste to stop you from starting. You're coming the other way with us, to the hockey match." "The team will be here before long," added Glenda. "No sense in going back. We may as well wait at the station." The 3 girls paced up and down the platform, talking eagerly. "I was in such an awful hurry and so worried. I didn't think of anything but the fact that Mother was ill, and I must catch this next train at all costs," Allison confessed. "But as I was trying to swallow a mouthful of food and nearly choking in the attempt, it did cross my mind to wonder why Dad didn't phone. I put it down to the phone being out of order. It was the last time I was home. Fortunately, Prinny thought of it." "Yes, but not until we put it into her head to suspect the genuineness of the telegram," said Glenda. "What do you mean? What made you suspect it wasn't genuine? I can't think who on earth would played such a mean trick. It gave me a pretty bad half-hour, I can tell you." "Wasn't it beastly, low-down thing to do?" cried Glenda vehemently. "It was Irene who found it out. I don't quite know how. Something about a letter she saw, a letter written to Monica Carr by one of the Fairhurst Priory girls. It's that girl Monica Carr who is at the bottom of this, of course. There will always be trouble in the school as long as she's allowed to stay here." Allison looked greatly disturbed. I hope we are mistaken in thinking so. I should hate to think one of our own girls was responsible for this. Not much room for a mistake. And we can't call Monica Carr one of our own girls exactly. She's never fitted in with the rest of us. What do you think, Nat? Asked Allison, for Nat had not yet spoken. I thought you and Monica were getting on pretty well together lately. So we were, replied Nat unhappily. I was beginning to fancy that she might perhaps be quite a jolly little soul when she forgot her queer moods and tantrums. Of course, I don't know anything about this. She never mentioned it to me, but you can't exactly account for what she's going to do next. Evidently not, Allison agreed a little dryly. A few minutes later, Miss Cazalet arrived, accompanied by Madge, Deirdre, and half a dozen others, while many more were close behind. Quite a large number of girls were going to the match as spectators. Deirdre welcomed Allison with heartfelt relief. Thank goodness. I've been wondering all the way how on earth I could fill your place without disorganizing the team too hopelessly, supposing Glenda and Nat had not been in time. However, it's all right now. And for once in my life, added Madge, my scatterbrains have functioned properly. I've remembered to bring your stick and your pads, also your hockey kit, which I found flung in an untidy heap on your cubicle floor. 2 other girls are bringing along your sticks, Glenda and Nat. When the train steamed into the station, there was a general scramble for empty carriages. Miss Cazalet, Madge, Deirdre, Pam, Allison, and Nat crowded into one compartment with several other members of the team. While in the act of scrambling in, Nat recollected with dismay that the previous evening Monica had suddenly and inexplicably announced her intention of putting her name on the list of those who wished to accompany the team to the match, and she hung out of the window to see if there were any signs of her. Yes, there she was, getting into a carriage with several other girls. Nat withdrew her head hastily as the train began to move. There were only 2 members of the team in the party who occupied Monica's carriage. Olive James, the girl who had come in as a reserve when it was thought Allison would not be playing, and Lorna Payne, the original reserve, who played inside right. Of course, as things had turned out, it was probable that neither would be called upon to play. Among the others were Prue and Maggie, who had forgotten their animosity against the hockey club when there was a chance of today's outing. Prue had an extraordinary nose for scandal or a lively story of any description, and seemed able to smell one a mile off, as her sister Pam was wont to say rather unkindly. Therefore, no one was surprised when, the moment they were all seated, Prue turned to Lorna and Olive and demanded, Hey, what's this we hear about someone sending a bogus telegram to entice Allison away? I heard Madge and Deirdre say something about it. You would, returned Lorna sarcastically, while Olive piped in. All I know is that just before dinner, Deirdre grabbed me in an awful stew and told me I should be going as reserve and Lorna would be playing, as Allison had had bad news from home and wouldn't be able to come. Lorna was one of those girls who had been present when Irene told her tale. The story comes from Irene, she explained. She accused Monica of plotting with one of the girls at her old school, Fairhurst Priory, to entice Allison away with a sham telegram in order to spoil our chances of winning the Shield. Monica, who occupied a corner seat and had been gazing out of the window, turned round with a start as she heard her name mentioned. What do you mean? She demanded. What does Irene say about me? She read one of your letters by mistake, the letter this Fairhurst girl sent you. Irene kept the letter. In fact, she showed it to us. Great commotion amongst the listeners. Prue pretended to fan herself vigorously, overcome with horror. Tell it me again, she exclaimed. My poor wits won't grasp it. Lorna, with a glance of contempt at Monica, repeated Irene's story. Prue listened attentively, and Maggie cried indignantly. What a mean trick! Fancy having a real live traitor in the school. It seems, said Prue with equal indignation, that we have been nourishing a viper in our bosoms. What have you to say for yourself, miss? Addressing the culprit. Monica seemed to shrink back in her seat. Nothing, she replied sullenly. I haven't anything to say. I didn't send the telegram, though. We don't suppose you did, retorted Lorna with sarcasm, seeing that it was sent from London. No doubt you got someone to send it for you. Don't argue with her, girls, advised Olive. She isn't worth it. Just ignore her. If this is true, there are plenty who will see the matter isn't overlooked. Pretty, for one, stated Lorna. Madge and Irene want to tell her all about it. Another sensation. My gracious, said Maggie solemnly. Pretty will soon get to the bottom of it. I wouldn't be in Monica Carr's shoes for anything. This will mean expulsion for her, girls, mark my words. Monica turned her face to the window again and continued to gaze out as if absorbed in the scenery. And for the rest of the short journey, her fellow travelers ignored her completely. I don't know. Do you guys think she really didn't have anything to do with it? Or is she just saying that to cover herself? No clue. I feel like she told them she said to, oops, she said to, oh, thank you for the hydrate. I literally just did, but okay. She told Nat that, she wasn't lying when she said that the field hockey sticks weren't hidden. They technically weren't hiding. They were there if they had looked there. She couldn't have sent it if she wasn't in London. But who's to say she didn't have her friend from the other school manage to get someone in London to send it for her? Then she could claim it wasn't her. But the fact that she jerked her head in surprise, too, makes me like, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Let's find out. Chapter 12, Sentence is Delayed. Now, Monica, said Nat firmly as she closed the study door upon the outer world. Are we going to get the game or not? I want to know all about it. Did you send that telegram, and if so, why? I thought I had successfully managed to keep my eye upon you since the last upset, she added reproachfully. Monica sat down in the nearest chair with a tired sigh. Oh, what does it matter? You won, after all. I think I'm glad you did now. Oh, yay, they won. As for me, the girls in the train said they expected Prinny would expel me. Do you think I shall be expelled, Nat? It's within the bounds of possibility, replied Nat, severely, for she felt Monica deserved a good fright. But you don't seem to mind about that sort of thing. I shouldn't have minded a bit when I first came, confessed Monica. But it's different now. I don't want to be expelled now. Then why would she do it? She had such a forlorn look that Nat's susceptible heart was touched. She recalled how all the girls at the match and on the return journey had pointedly cut Monica, as she herself had been the only one who would speak to her. Your best chance will be to confess all you know about it, she said sensibly, and tell Prinny you are sorry. She's not half a bad sort, really. I'd rather tell her anything than Miss Bennet, for instance. I didn't send the telegram, Monica said. That's true, but I'm responsible for having it sent. I knew it. It was my idea, so I suppose I'm chiefly to blame. She looked inquiringly at Nat. If you mean as it is the person who plans a wrong just as bad as the person who carries it out, I'd certainly say yes, she is, Nat answered. But you still haven't told me much about it. Before Monica could speak again, there was a tap on the door, and Pam looked in. Prinny wants to see Monica in her room at once, she said briefly. The dread summons had come. Monica moved reluctantly towards the door, then turned and came back. I say, Nat. There was earnest appeal in the eyes she raised to Nat's face. Truly, I'm glad the telegram plan wasn't successful and that the school won. You do believe me, don't you? And Nat heard herself replying quite heartily, Of course I do, if you say so. Monica's interview with the principal was not at all reassuring. Miss Julian looked so very stern and severe that Monica found it too difficult a matter to follow Nat's advice and confess the story in all its details, and fell back upon brief and reluctant answers to the principal's questions. "Are you responsible for having this telegram sent, Monica?" the principal began, pointing to the fateful document which lay on the table. Monica hesitated, wondering how to answer without telling a deliberate untruth. She could feel her knees shaking beneath her. "I did not send it, Miss Julian," she answered at last. "I did not even know it had been sent till I heard the other girls talking about it." "Do you know who sent it?" I I think so." "Who was it then?" Monica was silent. "A girl in this school?" Monica shook her head. "Was it one of the Fairhurst Priory girls? This girl with whom you corresponded?" Again Monica was silent. "Come, Monica," said Miss Julian. "I must know the truth. I shall be obliged to think the worst of you if you don't speak up frankly. Can you explain why this girl wrote such a letter to you?" And she picked up from the table the letter Irene had purloined. "Do you think this is a very nice kind of letter to receive from a girl in another school? Listen to this, for instance. Do you still hate rules and regulations and persons in authority? Don't you think it would be fun to put a little spoke in their wheels? I mean in St. Etheldrada's hopes of winning the shield. I know how clever you are and how full of ideas. I should love to see if you could pull it off. That does not sound very loyal to your school, does it?" Monica looked shamefacedly at the floor, but still remained dumb. It was harder than ever to speak up. Miss Julian continued her questions. "Have you the other letter Irene saw?" "No, I tore it up afterwards." "Is it true that it said, 'Your idea about the telegram is clever, though simple'? I shall be curious to see how it works." "Yes, something like that," Monica replied faintly. "Did she have the telegram sent, or did you?" "She did." "But you planned it. It was your idea?" "Yes." "But why didn't you want the school to win, Monica? Besides, apart from that, didn't you realize what a cruel trick it was to play on Allison? What hours of anxiety and suspense it would cause her?" The principal's voice was very stern, so stern that Monica dared not lift her glance from the carpet pattern she was so desperately studying. Yet a few months before she had stood and listened with an attitude of hard defiance when told that she would not be allowed to return to her first school after the holidays. When Miss Julian spoke again, Monica was astonished at the sudden change from severity to gentleness. "You know, of course, Monica, that you came to St. Etheldrada's with a poor character. I was told at your last school you were naughty, stubborn, and unmanageable, finally bringing disgrace upon yourself and the school by barefaced cheating in a public exam, for which behavior you were quite unashamed and unrepentant. The headmistress' statement was confirmed by your aunt. Because I knew both your parents and knew what splendid people they were, it was hard for me to believe that their only child should be so deficient in moral stability. I wrote also to your old nurse, under whose care you lived for many years after your parents' death, and she declared that though highly strung and sometimes full of mischief, you had never been a bad girl, never unmanageable, dishonest, or untruthful. For the sake of the great friendship between your mother and myself, I resolved to give you another chance here on equal terms with the rest of my girls. So far I have not been unduly disappointed. At first I received reports that you did not always settle down in class as well as you should, and were sometimes troublesome to the mistresses. I asked the mistresses to take into account the fact that you were not used to school ways and school routine like the rest of our girls. On one occasion Miss Bennet had to punish you severely for neglecting your preparation, but since then reports on your work have been mainly good. Miss Andrews in particularly is highly delighted with your Latin. I had hoped such progress was going to continue till the end of the term, but this trick you have tried to play on Allison is one I cannot overlook. You should have broken with this girl on leaving your last school, and not have continued your friendship with her when you realized it was proving a bad influence. Cannot you tell me all about it, Monica? You have told me very little except the bare facts." "There isn't anything else to tell," Monica murmured, still wondering miserably if the principal was going to expel her. How gladly she would have denied her share in the matter, but she could not. Then I shall leave the matter where it is for a few days' consideration, the principal replied. Perhaps by then you will be willing to tell me why you planned this unkind trick. I shall speak to you again about it later, probably about a week's time. The astonished Monica was dismissed, still ignorant of her fate. A reprieve of a week! What was really in the principal's mind? She wished she knew. This uncertainty was far worse than the actual punishment. For a few days, Monica and the sham telegram formed the chief topic of conversation at St. Etheldreda's. Whatever room you entered, at whatever time of the day, save actual lesson hours, you might be sure to hear somebody discussing the affair. For indeed, schoolgirls, like everybody else, must have something to talk about, and a sensational story like this was pounced upon with avidity. Everyone wondered why the principal delayed in pronouncing sentence, and though the fifth and sixth, unlike the lower forms, had never believed it to be an offense calling for extreme punishments, they certainly did not think Monica should escape altogether. After about 3 days, the outburst of feeling began to die a natural death, though it was not entirely forgotten. For a while, the fifth vigorously sent Monica to Coventry, but as she had never been on friendly or intimate terms with her form companions, this was not such a great hardship as it sounds. Glenda and one or two others had tried hard to persuade Nat also to ostracize Monica, but in vain. Nat's attitude towards her study mate was a curious one, and in truth Nat herself could not account for her own feelings in the matter. She was the sort of girl who scorned sentimentality of any kind, and yet had a very soft spot for helpless creatures in distress, particularly dumb animals. During her first year at St. Etheldreda's, when a girl of 11 in the second form, she had broken the school ranks while on an afternoon's walk to rush to the rescue of a miserable, bedraggled cat some boys were teasing, attacking them with fists and feet till the mistress in charge came to the rescue. The cat was old and mangy and evil-smelling, and should have been painlessly chloroformed, but Nat had begged to be allowed to take it to school and give it a saucer of milk, after which it had been placed, dirt and all, upon the best silk cushion in front of the library fire, and Monica continued to show the same sullen, defiant front as she had done during her first week or two in the study, Nat would probably have condemned her as severely as any of the fifth, perhaps more severely. But something in Monica's plea that Nat should believe she regretted the telegram trick, and in her shrinking fear of being expelled again, touched the soft spot in Nat's heart in the same way as the bedraggled, mangy cat had done. I'm not going to lie, I would have reacted that way too if I saw somebody abusing a cat. Besides, Monica showed a certain courage in the way she patiently ignored the scornful looks and sneers that came from some of the girls, and Nat admired pluck. Nat would have had the least sympathy with a girl who cried and made an unnecessary fuss at receiving a blow on the hockey or cricket field, though she would have been one of the first to run to help her. By the end of the week, the girls had certainly forgotten their first bitter animosity. They had been busy with term examinations for several days, and when they met together after lesson hours now, it was to compare answers and discuss the difficulty of or otherwise of the various papers. Everyone was glad when Tuesday evening arrived, for the next morning would see the last of the examination papers, and after that they would be able to take things more easily. Lessons, that is, for there was still speech day to prepare for, a fortnight hence, and the hockey final to be played. On Tuesday evening, the fifth were full of suggested paper chase for Wednesday half-day. It was the weather that was chiefly responsible for the idea. It had turned very cold, and violent exertion was necessary to keep oneself warm. The ground was quite hard, the air clear and frosty, and there was no wind. Simply ideal weather for a paper chase. Besides, it was very good training for their hockey final, and they would find it a relief to let off steam after the strain of the examinations. It was decided that the paper chase should be a really good one, not a half-and-half affair, as Glenda put it, but 5 or 6 miles over the country. What is a paper chase? Hello, VTuber Sneezes, welcome in. I've heard this before. Okay, it was a film in 1973. And a TV series. Let's see. No. Paper Chase Game is a outdoor pursuit game where one group, the Hares, or because it's also known as Hares and Hounds, starts a run leaving a trail of paper scraps, the scent, for another group, the Hounds, to follow and catch. The Hares are given a head start and leave the paper trail as they run, and the Hounds try and find and catch them before they reach the finish line. That's kind of cool. Hmm, that's interesting. I've never played anything like that. Right? That's kind of cool. Okay. Most of the fifth, with the exception of a few of the less physically energetic, whose spirits quailed at the thought of those 5 or 6 miles, agreed to join in. I couldn't do it. I'd be caught, because I would be dead in reality. Many of the fourth were eager to participate, and Pam and Deirdre of the sixth also announced that they would like to share the fun. The fifth had already selected Nat as Hare for 2 reasons. Firstly, she was one of the quickest and most tireless runners in the school, and secondly, in the summer months she was so fond of taking long walks and cycling expeditions in search of flowers or botanical specimens for the nature study competition that she had an extensive and detailed knowledge of the surrounding country and could be relied upon to choose a suitable and interesting route. Following their usual custom, they left it to Nat to select a girl to accompany her as second Hare. While most of the fourth and fifth were busily engaged in the common room, tearing up paper into small pieces, Nat, who was nothing if not practical, declared her intention of running 5 or 6 times round the garden to see how long it would take to get her second wind. As she slipped out the back door, she became aware that Monica had followed her. "Hello, what do you want?" she asked in surprise. "Are you going to join in the paper chase, or do you consider it a waste of time and energy?" "Take me with you as the other Hare," was Monica's amazing proposal. "I am sure I should make a good Hare." Nat gasped. But do you really mean it?" She stuttered. "Yes, of course I do. I can run fast, though I've never learnt any of your games. I used to run about for miles in the country where I lived, and never get tired." Nat surveyed the slight but alert figure beside her. "Well, you are certainly light and skinny rather than fat," she admitted, "and you look as if you could run. Come on round with me, and let's see how long you can last." Nat started off with a burst of speed, but glancing round after covering 200 or 300 yards, she found that Monica was only a few feet behind her. "Yes, you can run quite fast," she jerked out, then dropped into a jog trot. When they had circled the garden several times, Nat pulled up, breathing deeply. Monica was still a few feet behind her, red in the face and panting, but showing no signs of wanting to give up yet. "I really believe you could do it," Nat declared. "Well, I'll try to work it for you, but I don't know if the rest of the girls will be willing, particularly the fifth." When Nat announced that she had chosen Monica as her fellow Hare, there was a general chorus of disapproval. "But why not?" Matt persisted. "What's your objection? She's quite a good runner, or I wouldn't have chosen her." "You know why not," replied Glenda coldly. "We object to having a girl like that sharing in our pastimes." "But why do you object?" "You know why well enough. Because of what happened a week ago." "But are you going on punishing her for that for the rest of her life at school? She's done nothing else so desperately wicked. Besides, she hasn't really been proved guilty yet. Prinny said she was going to wait a few days before making any decision. Time enough for us to follow suit when Prinny sets example." Some of the more peace-loving, milder-tempered girls looked at each other, obviously impressed by Nat's arguments. After all, you couldn't keep the hymn of hate going forever. Nat saw the impression she had made and hastened to deepen it. "Has Allison, the one most injured, said or done anything to Monica?" "You know she hasn't. She's been content to leave the matter in Prinny's hands. It isn't like Allison to hit anyone who's down. Besides, Monica's sorry for it now. She told me so. Even Glenda, who was by no means an ill-natured girl, began to waver. Well, if Deirdre and Pam don't mind, I don't suppose it really matters very much who goes with you, she said weakly. There was one still dissentient voice. I think it matters very much, Irene interjected sharply. Personally, I refuse to take part if Monica Carr does. She can't play fair. Nat answered smartly. I don't see that you have any right to criticize anyone for not playing fair. Do you call it playing fair to pry into and purloin another girl's private correspondence? Irene subsided with flaming cheeks and a look on her face that was half anger, half shame. So Nat got her way in the end. Punctually at 1:45 the next afternoon, a large crowd of girls assembled at the school gates. Nat and Monica, the former looking like a large man-o'-war with a small craft in tow, and each with a couple of bags bursting with paper scent, slung across her shoulders, stood by the gates in readiness for the start. They set off down the road at a brisk pace as the church clock struck the quarter. The rest of the girls skipped and jumped about impatiently till, a quarter of an hour later, Miss Cazalet gave the signal to start, and they all streamed into the road after the thin trail of paper scent. The hunt had begun. Chapter 13. A sensational paper chase. Nat set a brisk pace for the first part of the paper chase, declaring that she liked to get well out of sight of the hounds as soon as possible. She led the way across fields and through copses, over a stream by whose banks each year meadowsweet and herb willow grew profusely. Several times they climbed gates, and once they laid a trail along the bottom of a dry ditch, scrambling through a hole in the hedge at the end. Here Monica accidentally brushed a bed of stinging nettles, but though they must have stung her legs, her companion noticed with satisfaction that she made no complaint, and when Nat chose to set a very hard pace, she kept up with dogged determination. At length they came out upon a stretch of rough common land, where Nat explained that her scheme was to lay a trail right through the haunted farm, and thence to make their way back to the school gates as fast as they could. They were walking quickly up a rather steep slope that led to a collection of not very extensive and decidedly dilapidated farm buildings. Monica pricked up her ears. Did you say haunted? She inquired with interest. It's only a name, replied Nat with contempt. It has been unoccupied for the last half-dozen years or more, so of course folks say no one will live there because it's haunted. The truth is that the land has been bought by a neighboring farm, and these buildings aren't required. Besides, the soil here is poor and not of great value for farming purposes. She led the way through the farm gate that hung by one hinge across a muddy yard, then clambered through a paneless side window. The girls found themselves in a house where dust lay inches thick everywhere, and where birds, bats, and mice found a pleasant abode. The farmhouse itself was only a cottage, and after passing through 2 empty rooms, they let themselves out by the back door, which was bolted from the inside, but not locked. Come along, said Nat, straight down this slope, not too fast, so the grass is rather slippery. Then we'll make tracks for home as quickly as we can. My bag is getting rather light. So's mine, said Monica, then added, pointing, What is that down in that little hollow? Looks like a square fence. It's an old well, supposed to be very historical. It's called the Saxons' Well because when the Saxon army, fighting against the Danish invaders, was encamped behind the earthworks on the hill yonder, it is said they used to steal down and get water from this well. Whether that is true or not, I can't say, but the well is certainly very old. People also say it's so deep no one has ever yet touched the bottom, but I expect that's all rubbish. I've never been right up to it. Matsu haunted? Yeah, well, I feel like... Oh, Francis, I didn't even see that. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to class. I'm sorry I didn't greet you properly a few minutes ago. Let us just have a glance at it, suggested Monica. It's not an ordinary common or garden well, you know. Well, just a peep, replied Nat, as they came abreast of the fencing that bordered the well mouth. Monica pointed to the rusty but stout windlass that was erected over it. Is that what the Saxons used to draw up their water? Don't be silly. I suppose the last occupants of the farm used it for watering their cattle. As Nat spoke, she slipped through the bars of the fence, and crouching down, tried to peer over the edges of the well, around which the grass grew in thick, coarse tufts. From outside the fence, you could only see the outline of the wide, gaping mouth. Be careful, Monica said anxiously, and though she also slipped through the fence, which was several feet away from the well itself, she was careful to remain standing close beside it with a firm hold on the top bar. She had not Nat's utter contempt of physical danger. Moreover, her more vivid imagination was apt to see danger where Nat never thought of looking for it. Oh, here we go. How the accident happened, neither girl could clearly explain afterwards, but it was probably due to the fact that the high grass and soil around the unusually wide mouth of the well hung treacherously far over the edge. By the irony of fate, Nat was just saying, I should like to know how deep it is. I can't see down it without bending right over, when her words broke off abruptly as the soil and clumps of grass at the edge gave way under her. She made a desperate but futile attempt to recover her balance, and then disappeared over the edge amid a shower of dirt and small stones. Monica made one frantic clutch after her and actually succeeded in grasping her sleeve, but the material was torn out of her hand in the same second. For one awful instant, Monica stood rooted to the spot with terror, clutching frantically at the fence, then flinging herself flat on the ground as she lay as near the edge of the well as she dared and shouted, Nat! Nat! As loudly as she could. But there was no answer to her frenzied calls. Springing to her feet again, she stared wildly around. Not a soul was in sight, nor could she see any signs of habitation. So ignorant was she of this countryside that she did not even know in what direction to search for the nearest house. She might waste a long time wandering vainly about. The hounds were nowhere in view. It might be 20 minutes or more before any of them arrived at this spot. If Nat were injured, she would even now be drowning in the well water. I know, I saw that coming a mile away, too. Let's go to the deep on the bin. I mean, they didn't technically want to go into it. They just wanted to see it. You know. I mean, and of course, if anyone comes and finds them, they're going to believe that Monica pushed Nat, even though that is not the case whatsoever. All these thoughts flashed through Monica's mind in a few fleeting seconds. Then her glance fell upon the windlass and the rope hanging over the well mouth, falling into the depths below. It was only 6 years, Nat had said, since the farm had been occupied and well used. Holding the windlass with one hand, she bent forward, and catching the rope with the other, gave it a strong tug. The rope was a stout one, and although frayed on the outside by the weather, seemed sound enough. Monica had already learned to climb the ropes in the gymnasium with confidence, and clutching this rope frenziedly with both hands, she swung herself over the well mouth. For one horrible moment she hung there suspended by her hands. The next she had found and gripped the rope firmly between her feet, and was sliding down in a series of jerks, hand over hand. 4, 5, 6, she counted them to herself, and now her head was considerably below the edge of the well mouth. Then her heart gave a jump of horror as her feet failed to grip the rope, and she realized that she had now come to the end of it before reaching the surface of the water. There's a picture in the book right now of her holding the rope, dangling in the middle of the well, looking horrified down below her. Till then, she had purposely refrained from looking below, for the very thought of that gloomy depth turned her sick and giddy. But now, clutching the rope despairingly, she essayed a hasty glance down. In the dim light, about 6 feet below, she caught the glimmer of water. Again, half a dozen thoughts flashed through her mind in one lightning second of time. Should she climb up again, or should she drop into the water? If Nat were still alive, she might hold her up till the girls traced them to the well. She was a good swimmer and had been accustomed to the water from childhood, but it was numbing cold, she feared, and the water would be very cold indeed this winter day. She dared not waste a precious second in hesitation. With a quick, sobbing breath, she slid to the very end of the rope and dropped, prepared for an almost instantaneous plunge into icy water. Hello, rabbits are coming. It is always cold, but I'm trying to think. Would it still be frigid in winter because it's underground, so it's more insulated? There was no plunge of any sort, however. Instead, she alighted on her feet quite unhurt, in some 3 or 4 inches of soft mud and water. And almost before she had recovered from her astonishment, a voice, which seemed to come from a spot close to her feet, said in faint tones, "Hello, is that you, Monica?" And Nat herself rose up in much the same way as did the apparition of the crowned child in Macbeth, or so it seemed to Monica. It doesn't turn solid, but it would still be like hypothermia levels, right? Or would it just be like brisk? Stays the same temperature? She heard herself laughing shakily. "Then you're not dead after all, Nat. I thought you were, as you didn't answer when I called." Nat, leaning against the chalky side of the well, put her hand up to her head very gingerly. "My head is ringing like anything. There's a bump as big as an egg on one side. I suppose I must have struck it against the side when I fell. Probably it stunned me, for I don't remember thinking very clearly till you dropped from the skies. How long have I been down here?" "I don't know. It seems hours since you disappeared over the edge, but I suppose it's really only a minute or two." "How on earth did you get here? You didn't fall, too." "The waters of Lake Superior. It's not frozen, but they're practically freezing year round." That's probably it then. Monica pointed upwards. "I came down the rope, but it wasn't long enough, so I had to drop. I thought perhaps you were hurt." There was a sob in her voice. "Well, it's a fortunate chance you didn't drop on me, as you might very well have done. There isn't much area space down here. Isn't that rope end tantalizing, dangling just out of reach? Do you think you could grab it if I lifted you up, or you stood on my back?" Their united efforts to reach the rope, however, proved unavailing. The end still dangled a few inches too high. "Oh dear," said Monica. "I hope we shan't have to wait here much longer. It's so dirty and unpleasant. How long do you think the girls will be, supposing they lose the trail and fail to track us here?" It was Nat's philosophy to look on the bright side. "Not they," she replied confidently. "Besides, having come so far, they would guess I was making for this point. You can't exactly wander over the country how you like it. Too many hedges and barbed wire fences about. And if I know Pam and Deirdre and 1 or 2 others, they won't be very far behind either. You know, we wasted several minutes stopping to look at the well. We must shout." They shouted as loudly as they could, but there was no response. "Anyway, we know now how deep the well is," remarked Nat, still endeavoring to be cheerful. "Not a bit deep, really, so you can't believe all the exaggerated stories you hear. I wish it were quite dry, though this mud was certainly soft to fall on. I wonder there are any stones in here. It seems such a fascinating occupation. I mean, throwing stones down wells to hear the splash." "It's more fascinating than throwing yourself down," sighed Monica, on whose more highly strung nerves the strain of their unpleasant situation was beginning to tell. In response, Nat shouted again, but still there was no answer to their cries for help. At last, even Nat, whose head was throbbing violently, began to lose heart. "I feel like Alice in Wonderland," she said dismally, "only I'm sure she didn't find falling down a rabbit hole nearly as unpleasant as falling down a well." Monica giggled a little hysterically. "Or the Dormouse's treacle well," she suggested. "How long do you think we've been down here, Nat? Half an hour? 10 minutes, more likely. Come on, we'd better keep shouting now. It would be awful if they passed us by and left us here." "They won't do that. I left my bag of scent on the top. They're sure to notice it." "And I brought mine down with me," said Nat ruefully. What an ass I was to get so near an overhanging edge like that." They kept their shouts up for perhaps another 5 minutes, and at last were rewarded by hearing the confused sounds of many voices from somewhere above. Then quite distinctly came Pam's voice. "My goodness, I believe they are down the old Saxon well. Hang on to my legs, someone. I don't want to slip over." And a head appeared over the edge, peering cautiously down. "Cooey," sang Nat, And once again came Pam's voice in accents of alarm and astonishment. "Someone's certainly down here. Who is it?" "It's us," called Nat. "Monica and I." "Good gracious!" once more exclaimed Pam. "It's both of them. Whatever are you doing down there?" "Picking daisies," retorted Nat with pardonable exasperation. "You aren't hurt, I hope?" Pam inquired anxiously. "Nothing to speak of, but for goodness sake, hurry up and get us out." "Can't you climb up the rope?" "No, it's just out of reach. If you can lengthen it by any means, I expect we can manage it, or you could haul us up." "Righto, we'll soon have you out," Pam promised, and her head disappeared from view as she turned to explain what had happened to the alarmed group of girls who clustered round the fence. There was no time to waste wondering how both girls had managed to get themselves into such an extraordinary predicament. "Off with your girdles," Deirdre said briskly, "and join them together. Someone pull up that rope. Be careful how you knot the girdles. No grannies, mind." In very short time they had knotted their tunic girdles firmly together, and by this means had lengthened the rope. Then, not without a few decidedly difficult moments, they managed to haul the girls safely to the surface. Both Monica and Nat, though not seriously injured, were white-faced and shaken. Their shoes and stockings were caked with mud, and their tunics stained and torn. It was not the time for long explanations, as Deirdre saw at once. "Let us make our way to the high road as quickly as possible," she said decisively. "Then perhaps we can get a lift. I think we ought to get Monica and Nat back to school as soon as we can." "Well, I suppose the paper chase is at an end, and we must consider ourselves caught," Nat admitted resignedly. When they arrived at St. Etheldrada's, Nat and Monica were handed into the charge of Miss Perkins, the house mistress, Nat to have her many bruises well rubbed with embrocation and her scratches bathed. Strange to say, she appeared to be the better man of the two in spite of her fall, and the blow which had temporarily stunned her declared that save for a headache and the soreness of her bruises, she felt little the worse. At her own request, she was allowed to spend the evening in her study, on condition that she rested and did not talk or excite herself too much. On the other hand, Monica, though she managed to keep a firm hold on herself till they reached the school, partially collapsed afterwards from nervous strain, and Miss Perkins put her to bed in the sick room, declaring that a good rest was probably all she needed, and that doubtless she would be herself again in the morning. The juniors and seniors, too, were so excited over this sensational end to the paper chase that they simply had to spend a considerable time in the common room talking it all over. I'm moving my blanket. Hold on. Our water is very cold. It hurts to wash the veggies even in summer. Ooh, that's no good then. I mean, I'm sure it tastes great to drink when you're like super hot. Maggie, who had seen Miss Perkins taking Monica to the sick room, was listened to with close attention as she described the incident with relish, concluding, "She wasn't hurt at all, hardly at all anyway. It was just her nerves," Miss Perkins said. "She was very white and kind of shaking all over." "It seems so queer to me," remarked Prue, "is how they both managed to get down there. You can understand one slipping over, though that seems rather extraordinary, but not both of them." Here Olive chimed in. "I heard Glenda say it was Nat who fell in. Monica climbed down the rope after her, but it wasn't long enough they couldn't get out again." "Whatever did Monica do that for?" demanded Prue. "I should have thought the most sensible thing to do would be to run to the nearest house for help, or to turn back for the girls who were following them." Olive shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know what her idea was. Lost her head, I expect, and hardly knew what she was doing." "I think she did a brave thing. She didn't want to go down there. She thought the rope would be long enough, and she's right. She doesn't know the area. So she was going to get lost trying to get help." "Still," said Prue reflectively, "it took a little pluck to slide down that rope. An old well isn't a nice thing to lower oneself into, even if it isn't deep. And I saw that rope, too. It hadn't been used for some years and might easily have been more rotten with age and exposure to the weather than it proved to be." And the other girls agreed that, whatever her faults, the black sheep had pluck. "Isn't it just like Nat to spoil a good paper chase by falling into a well?" cried Maggie. Like her, to'd bob up out of it practically unhurt, and the discussion ended in a general laugh. The next day went by very quietly. Monica did not appear. She had passed a restless night, and the principal agreed with Miss Perkins that it would be best to continue to keep her in absolute quiet in the sick room for another day or two. Everyone was looking forward to Friday morning with mixed feelings, among which apprehension played a large part. The exam results were to be read out at prayers. As St. Etheldrada's term exam lists were not published till the exams were over and all the papers marked. Then it was the principal's custom to read out the position lists at prayers one morning and make any comments she thought necessary. The fifth were particularly interested in their own results that term. All remembered the boasts of the new girl that she could and would wrest Irene's position from her and occupy it herself, and it was common knowledge that in her zeal for swatting she had decorated the walls of her study with useful tidbits of information. Someone had pointed out that good though Monica's Latin and English subjects were, her maths were very shaky, while she had only attained a third-form standard of French. When the exam began, however, it was ascertained that the French difficulty would be no hindrance to Monica, for she would take the third-form paper, and the mark she obtained for it would be included in her total. As for her weakness at maths, in her zeal for her friend's cause, Glenda was unkind enough to suggest that she would probably resort to her previous method of overcoming this difficulty and smuggle a book of theorems into the geometry examination. But though several girls had watched her closely, no one had detected her cheating this time. She has learned her lesson, Glenda observed cynically. Girls nudged each other. Girls nudged each other meaningly as Miss Julian entered the assembly hall for prayers, carrying sheets of foolscap under her arm. Irene was observed to be looking a little pale and strained. Had this new girl really been in earnest over her boasting, or was it merely a great game of bluff she was putting up to scare them all? Nat was gloomily resigned to her fate, and had even ceased trying to remember whether she had or had not headed last page of her history paper. The short sixth-form position list was soon finished. The sixth, without exception, smiled cheerily from beginning to end of the reading. No one in the sixth took exams with great seriousness. As long as they pulled through comfortably, they were content. They all knew that Madge would be top. Her fluent flow of English would secure this position for her. Pam was intelligent but careless and happy-go-lucky. Deirdre and the other three were not in the least brainy. Now it was the fifth form's turn. At Miss Julian's first words, the tension left Irene's face and a sigh of relief passed her lips. How hard she had studied this last month. Now came her reward. In her mind, the principal's words still rang joyously. Irene has maintained her position at the top. I must congratulate her, especially as the mistresses report that she has been working very hard. If she continues in the same way, I am sure she will bring honor to the school when the Oxford senior results are announced. Lorna is second with 70%, 2% behind Irene, and Glenda and Ida are bracketed third. So she was the top with only 72% in her exams? How is that being on top? That baffles me. Shouldn't she be at least in the 90s? Yeah, but even if it's 100-point, even if it's a 100-point system, 70%. But they're not giving numbers, they're giving percentages. Lorna is second with 70%, 2% behind Irene, and I are bracketed third. Like you said, they didn't take the exam seriously as they got comfortable. No, that was the sixth form. The fifth form studied all the time and very hard. But how is your... I don't understand that. I don't. I need to look at something real quick. If anyone's from the UK and can answer my questions, Kintran! Welcome in, Kintran. How are you? How is your stream? If anyone in chat is from the UK, if you can explain your grading system to me, that would be great. Oh, this is weird. Okay. First class, so I'm looking. 70% is considered first class honors. 70% and above. This is from the Imperial College London. The university grading system was different from what you were used to. Any mark over 50% is a great grade. Huh? 50% of your answer is correct. Wait, really? Let me bring this up again. Getting a mark over 50 means that you are 50% means that you are beginning to understand the difficult work of your degree or school in this. Getting over 60% is excellent because it means you have demonstrated a deep knowledge of your subject to the marker. You may be used to getting marks of 90 to 100%, but this is very unlikely to happen at university. How would that not be like? Remember that marks in this 50 to 70% range are perfectly normal. Your grades will improve as you get used to working at university level and in the style required by your degree subject. Upper second class honors is 60 to 70%. Lower second class honors is 50 to 60%. And third class honors is 40 to 50%. That's crazy to me. Hi, Kendran. How was your stream? What did you do? I'm boggled over this, but well, it is what it is. Okay. The fifth stole stealthy and amazed glances at each other as name after name fell from the principal's lips, and still Monica Carr's was not among them. When the list was finished, the girls looked at each other with stunned incredulity. Monica's name came last, actually the very last. Nat was fourth from bottom, a feat which left her wondering all through the proceedings which followed how she had possibly achieved it. By the time Miss Julian had finished with the lowest form, Nat had decided that she could not, after all, have omitted to head the last page of the history paper. But Monica studied so hard. Did she just not care when it came to the exams and just gave up? The principal did not attempt to read out the list of the separate subjects, but the head girl of each form was called out to receive them, so that she might pin them up in the classrooms. There the girls were allowed a good 10 minutes grace before the entry of the mistress to read the lists. Hubbub reigned in the fifth form room. Now no one appeared to be bothering much over their own marks. All were chiefly concerned with those of the absent Monica, and all seemed to be talking at once. Just fancy, I never thought for a minute she would be top, but it's rather a come-down to find herself at the bottom. Great was the fall thereof, n'est-ce pas, likewise nichtoir. That's what comes of boasting. Nonsense. In my opinion, she knew she hadn't the slightest chance of being top. It was just bluff to annoy us all, particularly Irene. As if she could be our top girl. Look at her marks, girls. Failures in all the math papers. Algebra, geometry, and arithmetic. I expect she copied most of her maths prep from Nat. She's done badly in French, too, though I suppose that isn't surprising, as this was her first term at it. I thought she'd do better in English, though. And Latin. Everyone made sure that ablative absolute would be top, and she's only third. Miss Andrews will look blue. Here Nat, coming out of an absorbed perusal of her marks to see where she had gained her unexpected rise, thought at times someone spoke a word in defense of the absent victim. Monica isn't as stupid as that list makes out, she declared firmly. She's quite intelligent, really, but you can't expect her to do good work after the worrying she's had, wondering during exams whether she was going to be expelled or not, cut by the rest of the form. How could you expect anyone to do herself justice? To have her mind on her work sufficiently to obtain good results. It's true. The majority of the form were willing to agree that there was something in this argument, and if they were rather unsettled for the rest of the day, the mistresses made allowances. 2 girls at least passed the time in blissful anticipation of the moment when they should present their reports to their parents at home. Both had attained their ambitions, Irene in maintaining her place at the top, Nat in escaping at last the teasing jeer and laughter which hitherto had fallen to her lot. Chapter 14. A Riddle is Solved. Miss Julian was talking to Allison in the principal's room. During periods when she was not taking a class, the principal often sent for Allison to give her special coaching and to correct her and set her studies. This Friday afternoon, however, the principal was not discussing lessons. Her first words to Allison explained her purpose in sending for the head girl. "Sit down, Allison. I want to speak to you about Monica." "The subject's rather an interesting one, Miss Julian," replied Allison, smiling. "Is she better?" "Yes, practically herself now. She is a highly strung, imaginative type of child, though apt to exaggerate and to take things very much to heart. That has largely been the cause of the trouble, I believe." "Has anything fresh come to light about that telegram, Miss Julian?" The principal nodded. "Yes, I was not in the least satisfied with my interview with the girl a week or so ago. She made no attempt to deny her part in the affair, confessed it quite frankly, in fact, but beyond a few bald statements I could get nothing out of her. I did not consider I knew enough to either to condemn or acquit, and in order to get to the bottom of it I wrote a letter to the principal of Fairhurst Priory School." "What a splendid idea!" cried Allison, who was deeply interested and listening with close attention. "Have you had an answer yet?" "Last Wednesday, by the afternoon post. The other girl, whose name is Lillian Dredge, confessed everything when taxed by her principal. It appears that she is by no means the best type of girl we have in our schools. She professed to admire a girl like Monica, who openly defied authority, but she lacked the courage to follow her example except in little underhand ways that would not be judged with much severity even if discovered. She was the only girl willing to be friendly with Monica during her short stay at the school, the others shunning her because of her unfriendly, hostile disposition. Monica accepted this girl's professed friendship without caring in the least about it, and knowing perfectly well that it would last only as long as Lillian thought it to her advantage." "Then it wasn't really friendship at all?" "No, not really. Lillian is evidently the kind of girl, and there are such to be found in our schools, though happily they are rare, who takes little interest in anything belonging to school life except the games, and even though she cares for games, she seems to lack the spirit of good sportsmanship which they are supposed to develop. She is a good hockey player, a member of the school 11. They had already won the Shield 2 years in succession, and was able to make use of this skill of hers in courting a certain measure of popularity among the other girls. She was anxious for her team to win the Shield this year, and after St. Etheldreda's defeated Staveley High School, she regarded us as their most dangerous opponents and the only team the Priory really had to fear." "That accounts for her letter, then?" interrupted Allison eagerly. "Yes, she wrote that first letter to Monica, claiming her friendship and making flattering remarks about her clever ideas. I don't think Lillian had any crystallized plans. She was only fishing, as we say." "And how did Monica reply?" "At first she did not intend to reply at all. She had no desire to renew this semblance of a friendship that meant nothing to either girl. Later on, however, something happened. There was some sort of quarrel between her and her study mate, Natalie Sandrich. I gather that Natalie was angry and annoyed with her, and in the heat of the moment made some scathing remarks which Monica took very much to heart. As a result, her preparation was neglected, leading to trouble next morning with Miss Bennet. In the bitterness of her spirit, Monica employed the time which should have been spent in preparation in answering Lillian's letter. She relieved her feelings by saying in her reply that it should be easy matter to spoil St. Etheldrada's chances by decoying you, Allison, away from the next match by means of a bogus telegram summoning you home to London on account of illness. Everyone said that without you, Everyone said that without you in the team, St. Etheldrada's would fall into pieces. A feather in your cap, Allison. Allison blushed and laughed. Oh, that's all nonsense, she declared, then added, Monica's idea wasn't very original, was it? It's been done so many times. Besides, she forgot there's such a thing as the telephone. Monica never really thought about it at all. She just put down the first thing that came into her head, with the idea of proving to Lillian what a simple task it was to anyone with brains. Allison nodded. I understand. Monica was just feeling sore and miserable, and not in a mood to care much what she said. That was it. However, it wasn't long before she and Natalie made up their quarrel, and Monica thought no more of Lillian till she received an answer to her letter. Lillian was pleased at the idea of Monica putting a spoke in our wheels. So much the better for her own team's chances, though she did not put it like that to Monica. The important part, as far as I am concerned, is that Monica was now settling down happily into our ways and getting quite keen on her school winning the Shield. She promptly wrote back to Lillian to say that she was sorry if she had misled her, but she hadn't the least intention of interfering with the hockey team and, in fact, wished them all success. She had been silly enough to write that other letter when she had been in a miserable and don't-care mood. The principal enclosed this letter for me to read, for fortunately Lillian had not destroyed it. To do her justice, I think Lillian was rather ashamed when she heard that another girl had got into serious trouble through her own misdeeds. Then Lillian alone was responsible for that telegram? Yes, she says she got a cousin who lived in London to send it. But why didn't Monica explain all this? She asked Allison, perplexed. That is harder to understand. I know why. Because she's had nobody ever believe her and care about her. So why should she bother trying to explain? Because nobody would believe her anyway. That's what I'm assuming. Because at a certain point, you just get tired of trying to get people to listen. That is harder to understand. As I said before, I could get little out of her besides a few bald answers to direct questions. Some people find it very hard to unburden themselves, you know, especially children. I think it was chiefly because Monica felt that the responsibility was partly hers, since she had deliberately put the idea into the other girl's mind, and was therefore equally to blame. An extraordinary point of view to take, of course, but that was how she regarded it. Anyway, Allison commented, it shows pretty plainly that she isn't without a conscience or a sense of right or wrong. On the contrary, those qualities seem to be highly developed in Monica for a girl of her age. Then I suppose that ends the telegram affair. Yes, I am glad we have got to the bottom of it so successfully. By the by, you did not join in the paper chase last Wednesday, did you, Allison? No, I did not like to spare the time, Miss Julian. It was very fortunate the well was not deep and was practically dry, wasn't it? Yes, indeed. I shudder to think what might have happened otherwise. As it was remarkable that Natalie escaped almost scot-free. I don't think anyone yet realizes the part Monica played there. The part Monica played? Repeated Allison inquiringly. Yes, I wanted to tell you of that also. But I thought we knew all about it. Apparently not. Yesterday morning, Miss Perkins came to me and told me Monica had passed a restless night. Evidently, she had her previous day's experiences on her mind, and for several times cried out, and she had on her mind for several times she cried out and muttered in her sleep, and each time about the water in the well and how cold it would be. Miss Perkins said she seemed to have a horror of falling into cold water. But the well was dry, interjected Allison. Yes, but Miss Perkins was sure that was what she kept saying. Auntie! Welcome in, Auntie. How are you? Welcome into class. Oh! Arlie, how are you? Welcome in a double raid. Hello, how are you both? How are your streams? 'Tis a night of raids. Hello, Kenny. Our one brain cell is tired. What did you do? What did both of you do in your streams? We were puzzling and we were here for... Oh, wow. That... I still haven't finished that one. Let's see. We were here with Kanabo. We were here together with Lorelei. We were here too with Nums, which we never finished. Did Lorelei and I finish ours? Yes, we did. I didn't finish We Were Here to whichever the second one was. With Nums, we got frustrated and angry at each other, and he was just screaming because I couldn't figure things out, and neither could he. Oh yay, I'm glad you do. And then Crusader and I were playing We Were Here Forever, and that was not... that was chaos too. Eventually we'll finish it. I don't know if I'll ever get to drag Nums back into the game. I should bully him. Although he hasn't responded to my last messages. So, but... Kanabo and I were frustrated, but it was short, so I thought it would be okay. So when Laura and I played the next time, it was not a short game, and we were exhausted by the end. We were just like, let's finish and just get it done with so we never have to do this again. It was so frustrating. Oh, you've never heard of it, Rabbits? It's really fun. So it's a two-person game, and there's puzzles you have to solve, but you each have different views of everything. So for example, you're like half the time you're in different parts. So at one point, I had a series of figures in front of me, and actually if you go to my clips, there's a clip of it there. But there's one of me reading something to Kanabo, and he has to find the correct pictures so that he can have the next clue to pass it on to me. Apparently I'm 50% of the way to completing my sub goal. Yay. And unfortunately he knows how to play chess and I don't, and he was like, okay, you're gonna move this chess piece there, and thank you, Tips. It didn't even say, it just suddenly was there, and I was like, what? What is happening? And he was telling me, okay, you're gonna move this chess wise, and I'm like, I don't know what these pieces are or how they move. So he had to count the numbers, and I died so many times from freezing. It was awful. How are you, Tibbs? Okay, let's continue with the book because I think we're almost done. I think we only have a chapter or two left after this one. For some of them, there's a timer. Yes, not all of them. That one was, so the one for the chess one, it was because my character was outside in the freezing cold. So there was a time limit because you froze to death. But you would restart in that game. It didn't take you back to the beginning because I would have just rage quit at that point. Like, nope, I'm done forever. Yeah, I don't like having to think too. I panic. The minute a timer comes on, I panic. Like, tell me how... No, because that doesn't even make sense either. Just sometimes it's ridiculous. Okay. Let's continue. Okay. Yes, but Miss Perkins was sure that was what she kept saying. I saw Monica later in the day and told her I had received an answer to an inquiry had sent to the Priory School. I was more successful at this attempt. Miss Julian smiled, and in a short time I managed to win her confidence and learnt what I have just been telling you. I also gathered further details of Wednesday's misadventure, how Nat slipped into the well and how Monica slid down the rope after her almost immediately, and the belief that there was deep water below, and that if Nat were injured by the fall, she would quickly drown. I see, cried Allison. It was really an attempt on her part to save Nat's life. Yes. The rope was only a few yards long, and when she came to the end, she had to make up her mind what to do. For the first time, she dared to glance down and saw what she thought to be the glimmer of water below, though we know it was only the soft, wet mud at the bottom. She was a good swimmer, but did not know if she would be strong enough to hold Nat up till help arrived. But it was the only chance of saving Nat, so she thought, and desperately frightened though she was, she let go of the rope and dropped, expecting to plunge into icy cold water. Allison leaned forwards, her eyes glowing. That was a very plucky thing to do, Miss Julian, believing what she did. It was, indeed, the more so as she was extremely frightened. I am quite convinced that there is a good deal of splendid material in a girl who can behave like that. It seems as if she thinks rather a lot of Nat, Allison ventured. Yes, Natalie seems to be the only girl in her form she cares anything at all about. She said to me quite frankly that if it had been anyone else but Nat in the well, she doesn't think she would have had sufficient courage to drop from the rope. Allison was silent, wondering if her words to Monica that September afternoon in the summer house had helped to change Monica's opinion of Nat. But aloud she only said, Monica wouldn't chum up with any of the girls in the Fifth at first. But Nat's a nice girl, and I think one of the finest characters in the Fifth, though she doesn't shine there very much. When she volunteered to have Monica in her study, I said to myself that if this new girl couldn't get on with Nat, she couldn't get on with anybody. I suppose there is no doubt about her behavior at Fairhurst before she came here? Oh, no, none at all. She was absolutely defiant and seemed quite hardened. But why would she be? She hasn't been so here. Unapproachable and moody, yes, and sometimes mischievous, but nothing worse. That was what I could not understand. Now that I know the cause, it seems hardly credible that a child should be affected in such a peculiar way. And again Allison settled herself down in her chair to listen as the principal went on talking. Chapter 15. Allison tells a story. When tea was over the fifth, surprised by the news that Allison wished to speak to them in the common room before they settled down in their evening's prep, made their way thither in groups of twos and threes. Monica was among the company, having left the sick room that afternoon, though excused from schoolwork till the following morning. Everyone was standing about in groups, wondering what Allison had to say to them, when the head girl herself entered the room as brisk and cheerful as ever. You all seem to be here, I see. Let's settle down round the fire. Pull out the hassocks, some of you. I brought some chestnuts Mother sent me yesterday, and you can roast them while you listen to what I've got to tell you. It isn't a lecture, is it? Asked Ida apprehensively, as they all scrambled to secure seats around the fire. Lecture? Oh, no. I'm merely going to tell you a little story. Pretty was going to tell it to you. Then she suggested you might like to hear it from me instead, and I just jumped at the chance. I love telling stories, and this is a true one. Only you must all promise not to interrupt till I've quite finished, or you'll make me lose the thread of it. Yes, we promise. Go on, please, came an eager chorus, for everybody there knew that Allison had quite a genius for telling stories. So Allison began. Well, this is a story about a girl like yourselves. Her name? We'll call her Alice. Unfortunately, Alice's parents died when she was quite young, and she was left in charge of her uncle, who was made her guardian. He was a soldier and was abroad a good deal, so Alice couldn't live with him. Instead, she lived in the country in charge of her nurse. Allison led a rather lonely life, for she never went to school but had lessons instead at the rectory, where the rector taught her and several delicate little boys who were not robust enough to go to preparatory boarding schools. What a rotten time she must have had, remarked Glenda. Didn't she know any other children? Well, sometimes she visited the other children who lived near, but very often she had to make her own amusements and formed the habit of reading a great deal and dreaming over the books she read. This is so meta, it really is. I imagine Monica sitting there like, oh, not this again. The red letter days in her life were her uncle's visits. Other children had mothers and fathers, it was true, but very few had for a guardian an officer in the British Army, who wore rows of medals for brave and gallant deeds, and who could tell you breathless stories of daring and heroic actions, who was always kind to you, and who made you want to grow up as brave and generous as he was. I'd rather have a mother and a father, observed Ida, selecting a chestnut from the hearth and peeling off the shell. However, I suppose he was the next best thing. Anyway, Allison went on, Alice thought the world of him. Like many other young people, she cherished a passionate hero worship for this idol of hers, who, she felt, possessed all the virtues of nobility, gallantry, honesty, and courage. You may guess how delighted she was when she heard that he had resigned his commission and had settled down to live in England, and that she was to make her home with him and his sister in the future. But a dreadful blow fell before she experienced this new happiness. Good night, Matsu. You'll have to watch the rest of the stream so you get the rest of the story. Have a good night. What blow? Demanded Ida, pausing in the act of popping the chestnut into her mouth. She hadn't been very interested in Alice up to that point, but now the story began to get more interesting. I warned you not to interrupt, Allison said severely. I'm just going to tell you. Alice's nurse received the news, but kept it from her charge, and in answer to Alice's constant inquiries, when is Uncle coming to fetch me, she could only shake her head sadly. But her aunt came to fetch her at last, and Alice's sensitive spirit was chilled by her cold, unloving greeting. She soon learnt the truth. Her uncle and guardian had become involved in money difficulties and had fled the country secretly, taking with him the little fortune which Alice's parents had left in his charge for their child. What a shame! Cried several girls together. Whatever did Alice do? Added Glenda. I suppose she had nothing at all after that. For a little while after she heard the news, she had a sort of lost, bewildered feeling, as if she could feel no solid ground under her feet, continued Allison. If her uncle could do this thing, then it seemed as if there was no honor, nor honesty, nor kindliness in the world. The lost, lonely feeling changed and hardened into a spirit of sullen resentment, which grew worse under her aunt's treatment of her. Her aunt, unfortunately, hadn't a very loving disposition, did not care for young people, but being very conscientious, she regarded it as her duty to look after the child her brother had robbed and deserted, though she made it quite plain to Alice that the duty was an unpleasant one. Alice, I suppose, argued that if people in this world had no scruples and were all selfish, why should she bother either? You can understand how she felt, can't you? The listeners, now really interested, nodded, and Glenda remarked feelingly, I guess I should have felt rather like it myself. In a very short time, Allison went on, her aunt dispatched her to a boarding school, still a rebel, and there Alice had a brief but hectic career, which ended in her being expelled for cheating. Everybody cheated in this life when it served their purpose, Alice had decided, so why shouldn't she? As for being expelled, nobody wanted her at the school, so what did it matter? At this point in Allison's story, the girls, who were now listening with close attention, began to steal glances at each other, then to look around the room as if in search of someone. Monica, who had been sitting in the farthermost corner near the door, flushed and stirred uncomfortably. I say, this girl Alice, Glenda was beginning, but Allison broke in peremptorily. Now, Glenda, you know you promised not to interrupt. Fill your mouth with a chestnut instead. Sorry, Allison, said Glenda meekly. I won't transgress again. Hurry up and tell us what happened to Alice after that. Let me see. I just got to where Alice left her first school. Well, her aunt was naturally extremely annoyed and didn't quite know what would have happened to Alice if a former great friend of her mother's had not offered to have her at the school of which she was principal. This lady wanted Alice to have a fair and square start at her school. Here someone was heard to murmur St. Etheldreda's under her breath, but Allison took no notice and went on as if she had not heard. So she purposely ignored the aunt's warnings that her niece must be dealt with very firmly indeed, or she would be quite unmanageable. She told no one that Alice had been sent away from one school, only asked the other mistresses to make allowances for her at first, because she had not been accustomed to school life and school rules. Unfortunately, the story leaked out. Glenda had a letter, Ida interjected hastily, but at Allison's frown she apologized quickly. Sorry, Allison, I forgot. The story, as I said, leaked out, and Alice, who by this time was beginning to feel that perhaps she had made a mistake in judging everybody by the actions of her uncle, and that there were plenty of people in the world who were kind and generous and honorable, learned straight away that she was not to be given another chance, and that all the girls, as she thought, had been carefully warned against her. Once again she felt hurt and sore, and in that don't-care-a-hang mood. Allison paused, looked around her little circle of listeners to see if they were following her, then added impressively, You know yourselves how much you are sometimes affected by quite little things. It was quite a little thing that restored Alice's lost faith in mankind, or perhaps, here Allison's expression was lost some of its solemnity, and her eyes twinkled mischievously. I oughtn't really to call Nat little, because she's rather big, especially her hands and feet, but... Nat jumped visibly at the unexpected sound of her own name, and her serene, placid expression changed to one of confused amazement. I? She stuttered. What had I got to do with it? Only that later on Alice heard how one girl in her form had stood up for her and pleaded that she should be given a chance to make a fair start. And afterwards that girl treated her, well, just as she would have treated any other girl of her acquaintance. In return, Alice tried to show her gratitude, but her first venture was not very successful. She locked up one of the members of the hockey team with the sole idea of giving her friend a chance of achieving her ambition and playing in the first 11. But the friend was angry at the methods she used and quarreled with her. Then Allison related the story of the telegram in much the same words that the principal had used in telling it to her, and when she had finished she went straight on with the adventure of the well from Monica's point of view, which up till then had never occurred to anyone. When Allison had concluded, there was silence for just a few minutes. The chestnuts, forgotten, burned unnoticed on the bars of the grate. Then Glenda looked around the room. By the by, where is Monica? For of course that's whom you mean, though you called her Alice. But Monica had disappeared. The place which she had occupied on the outskirts of the group was vacant. She was here a minute ago, said someone. She must have slipped out while we were listening to Allison, Ida suggested. Allison rose leisurely to her feet, smoothing down the creases in her dress. And that's my story, girls. After all, you see, Alice wasn't the desperately wicked character we thought her at first. Certainly she had some funny ideas in her head at one time, but I think she had pretty well got rid of them before she had been here a couple of months. As for the telegram business, the principal will make a short public announcement at prayers tomorrow to put the responsibility of the dark deed on the real culprit. Thank goodness we've no girls like that at St. Etheldrada's. The fifth looked at each other, much impressed. Really, perhaps we weren't as nice to Monica as we might have been, murmured Glenda pensively, as if the thought had just occurred to her. Take my advice, said Allison, and treat her like any other ordinary schoolgirl, and you'll find she'll soon be one. Irene's cheeks were burning. And it wasn't the fire, though she was quite close to it. Anyway, she burst out with explosive suddenness, this will be a lesson to me never to go prying into other people's correspondence again. To think, said Nat sadly, that Monica believed she was risking her life to save a clumsy elephant like me, and I've never even said thank you for it. Plenty of time yet, Nat, said Allison cheerfully. Well, I mustn't linger any longer. Virgil calls me. Thanks for listening so patiently. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Allison, came in an answering chorus. Isn't Allison a brick? Said Ida impulsively, as the door closed behind the head girl. She might have pointed out what a mean, self-opinionated lot we've been, all that is except Nat, but she never said a word. As for Nat, I guess she's the only one of us who's put in much kindness or consideration this term. You remember what Miss Julian said on first day? Oh, rot, protested Nat with scarlet cheeks. No, there's no head girl like ours, agreed Glenda, and I think you're right about Nat, too. Well, I must begin to see about prep, or there'll be wigs on the green tomorrow. She hurried off, and the rest of the girls, also with thoughts of prep that was waiting, reluctantly dispersed. Allison, however, had not quite completed her mission. On leaving the common room, she set out in quest of the missing Monica and speedily ran her to earth in the cubicle. Just the person I wanted to see, she declared as Monica looked up, startled, when she appeared in the doorway. What made you run away in the middle of my story? Weren't you interested in Alice? I, stammered Monica, and stopped. Well, never mind now, said Allison cheerfully. I finished the story without you, as it happened. What I've come to tell you now is that Prinny wants to see you in her room. Nothing dreadful, as Monica looked rather apprehensive. Only something she intended to ask you about before, but forgot. Am I to go now? Yes, run along. Allison's smile was both kind and cheery, and Monica went off feeling reassured. When she knocked at the principal's door and went inside, Miss Julian was still looking as kind as she had done during Monica's last interview with her in the sick room. Allison said you wished to see me, Monica explained her appearance. Yes, sit down, Monica. It has nothing to do with what we were talking about before, but I want you to answer me just as frankly. It is about your exams. How came you to have such a low position? I have had some really good reports about your work and intelligence from some of the mistresses, and I know you are capable of doing much better. You did not do your best, did you, Monica? Monica wriggled uneasily. No, Miss Julian, she confessed truthfully. Why not? Must I tell you? Asked Monica in a low voice, but this time she lifted her eyes frankly to Miss Julian's face. I will if you insist, but I would rather not. It's nothing disgraceful, she added hurriedly, and I promise that I will try to be nearer the top than the bottom next term. Miss Julian hesitated a moment. She felt sure that Monica was speaking the truth when she denied any discreditable intentions, and from the very clear idea she had now formed of Monica's character, she shrewdly guessed at some queer, quixotic motive underlying her act. Quickly she made up her mind. No, you need not tell me this time, she replied. I am going to take your word for it when you say there was nothing discreditable about it, but I shall expect you to keep your promise, and do better next term. Now run along and find your form companions. I am sure that you will soon find out they are ready to be friends, if you are. So Monica left the principal's study and made her way towards her own room with a light step that now and again degenerated into a little dancing skip, with the idea firmly rooted in her mind and growing stronger every minute that she was going to find plenty of happiness in her future life at St. Etheldrada's. Chapter 16. Nat makes a discovery, and I believe this is the final chapter. Monica was seated in her chair, absorbed in her favorite occupation of reading, when Nat entered. Nat had intended to say a few well-chosen words expressing her gratitude and thanks, but unfortunately emotion with Nat was generally accompanied by inarticulation, and all she achieved was a casual hello. Monica glanced up and said hello in reply, then returned to her book. Nat stood in the middle of the room, surveying its walls, her brow corrugated with thought. Suddenly she seemed to come to a decision, for she shook herself, moved towards the nearest wall with an air of great firmness, and proceeded deliberately and methodically to take down all the notices pinned there, piling them neatly on the table. Monica watched her in silence. When the walls were quite bare, Nat spoke in firm, decisive tones to match her manner. If you don't want these papers, Monica, I'm going to put them in the rubbish bin. I've quite made up my mind that this room is no longer going to be called the Chamber of Horrors. Next term there will be no more of these atrocities. The walls will be devoted to decorative and artistic purposes. You can have 2 of your for your Raphaels and Rubens, and I'll have the other 2 for my dogs. I don't mind, Monica replied with amazing indifference. No, I don't want them. Burn them if you like. Nat scooped up a bundle of papers and departed with them in her arms, returning a minute later to remark in tones of satisfaction. There, thank goodness. I shan't be staring at Pythagoras' theorem all next week. Good riddance to the horrible things. De mortuis, speak no evil of the departed, admonished Monica gently. After all, they have served their purpose. I say, said Nat, blushing a little, I'm sorry you didn't come out very well in the exams. Of course, I know you could have done a lot better if you hadn't been so worried and all that. Oh, I didn't mind, replied Monica cheerfully. I'm afraid I'm not really a proper schoolgirl yet, for I don't seem to care in the least whether I come out top or bottom. I don't see it matters much, but perhaps it's because I've no real home to take a report to. That must make a difference. Yes, I suppose you value it more for your people's sake and what they think of you than for your own, agreed Nat sympathetically. I'm going to write home this week and ask Mother if you can come to our place for the Christmas vacation. That's awfully good of you. I should love to come. We always fill the house up at holiday times. My brothers often bring their friends home, said Nat. She went towards the cupboard, then suddenly stopped halfway, as if struck by an entirely new idea. She turned and quickly came back towards Monica, conflicting expressions chasing each other across the face. What's up? Asked Monica. Garter busted? Nat ignored the question. In fact, she did not seem to hear it. Don't tell me I'm more of a blockhead than I already knew I was, she said slowly. Look here, Monica. For whose benefit was all that stuff put up on the walls? Yours or mine? What bee have you got in your bonnet now? Please answer my question, said Nat. Monica made no reply, only put her head on one side and wrinkled her impish puck-like way. You need not answer, Nat continued. You've given yourself away. I remember telling you that one of my 3 ambitions was not to be bottom of the form. Only you'd already said you intended to be top, didn't you mean it? Monica burst out laughing. I only said it for fun, just to make a little commotion among the self-satisfied fifth. I never cared a brass farthing about it. All the same, you are cleverer than most of the girls in the fifth, Nat persisted. It's absurd to think of you being bottom. Did you do it on purpose? Well, as I didn't care a scrap if I occupied the place and you cared very much, I thought I might as well rob you of it, Monica confessed, laughing. Nat sat down in a chair and gazed at Monica wonderingly. You are a queer girl. I see it all now. You pretended you wanted to be top and that the stuff on the walls was to help you to remember the work, when it was really to try and knock something into my head, and always making me hear you say your prep just when I was off for a game of chess. Whatever did you do it for? Oh, just for fun. You weren't stupid enough to be always at the bottom of the form, you know, Nat. You mean you aren't, retorted Nat. Still, she added after a moment's consideration, though I'm sure it's good of you to take so much trouble over me, I think I'd almost rather be bottom than sit in a room decorated in the same way again. Oh, it's raining outside. Nice. Perhaps we can manage it without such extreme measures next term, Monica said optimistically, if my luck holds out. However, I've a sort of feeling that it's going to change for the better. Something tells me that next Saturday, when St. Etheldreda's wins the hockey match, I shall not slip up in the goal circle instead of shooting the winning goal. That on speech day the following Wednesday, I shall not make my entry as Caesar's ghost at the wrong cue, as I did last year. You see, I feel that I have you as my mascot now. And Nat heaved a huge sigh of supreme content. The end. Oh, that was good. I liked the ending. Okay. I was really kind of getting worried that I would want her to be expelled. And thankfully she wasn't. Thankfully she was a good bean. Okay. So, how did you like the book, everyone? Let's talk about it while I prepare finding things. How did you all enjoy it? It was a good one, yeah. I really did like the book. I'm wondering, let's see, what else does this author do? Oh, similar books. We can check this. In browsing, similar books. Alice in Wonderland, Anne of Green Gables, Tom Sawyer, Christmas Carol. Yeah, literally everything we've already read. Let's see. Anything else by Brenda Page? Oh, she's got another one called Schoolgirl Rivals. Sounds like something she'd like, yeah. Oh, that's good. Thank you, Rabbits. If you go either on my YouTube or I think it still might be up on Twitch, but on my YouTube, the VOD is over there. Okay, so the next book, Schoolgirl Rivals by Brenda Page, is a novel written in the late 1930s. The story unfolds at an English boarding school, focusing on the experiences of a new student, Kitty Despard, an Australian girl who must navigate the complexities and rivalries of school life. The book captures the challenges Kitty faces as she adjusts to her new environment, the dynamics among different study houses, particularly concentrating on the competition between the girls. At the start of the narrative, readers are introduced to Kitty Despard as she embarks on her journey. No, it's not an rated 18. It's a Tibbs story, basically. It's like taking Tibbs out of Australia and plopping him in the UK. Introduced to Kitty as she embarks on her journey to East Hampton College, a prestigious boarding school. As she travels from Australia, she is filled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension surrounding her new school life. Once at the school, Kitty encounters a lively group of girls who quickly welcome her, but are also embroiled in chatter about school hierarchies, rivalries, and the low reputation of her assigned house, Carslake's. In the early interactions highlight Kitty's strong personality and athletic prowess, positioning her as a potential catalyst for change within her lackluster house as she embarks on various sports challenges, setting the stage for a narrative rife with competition, friendships, and personal growth. Ooh, yeah, we're reading that next. That's going to be our next one. Can I send this to myself? Send to Kindle. Nope, wrong button. I clicked the wrong link. Send. Or not, or open it bright on my screen. How dare. I found a way to do it. You hope there's a Summer Beach episode. Jesus. Okay, so that'll be our next read. How many chapters does it have? Let's take a look. Yeah, she would 100%. Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that in the least. This one was originally published in 1927. There are 11 chapters? That's it? It seems like it's very long, though. Maybe not. We'll find out. Okay, let's see. We're going to raid into, I believe, let's see, is she still on? Falcor is still on. Let's go. We're going to raid into Falcor. So, everyone, thank you for coming in. I apologize for not having, oh my god, what the I really thought Twitch was done with having naked people on streams. I wish I could, like, block things from showing up. Anyway, where is she? Falcor? Where are you? There she is. No, not Falcor. I pulled up the search filter like to raid, and immediately a basically naked ASM artist was on there, and I'm just like, please stop. We're going to raid Falcor. She's reading Oz. Yes, let's go. I haven't raided her in so long. All right, so everyone, thank you for coming in. Sorry about yesterday. I came home and I passed out after work. I will read again on. No, I'm not. Nope, not doing it. On Saturday night at 10 o'clock, we'll be doing another stream. We will finish Candide. Finish reading Candide. So let's go on over to Falcor. Bye, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.